I was born by the world tree and I devoured it. The first thing he remembered was the cold. It wasn't the kind of cold that bit at the skin or gnawed on bones, it was something deeper. A silence. A stillness. As if the world had already ended, and only the roots had stayed behind to remember. He opened his eyes to darkness. Not pitch black, something softer. Green-veined, pulsing with life. Thin roots wrapped around his limbs like vines on stone, pulsing faintly. Not choking. Holding. He didn't know his name. Not yet. But he knew he was alive because something inside him was beating, and not with a human rhythm. Thump. Whrrrm. Thump. It echoed like a drum wrapped in leaves, a heartbeat tangled with wind through branches. He shifted. The roots reacted instantly, loosening. They moved with strange gentleness, coiling away as if obeying an ancient agreement. One tendril brushed his face, then retracted into the soil like a whisper. His body ached. Muscles unused. Skin cracked. Bark-like flakes shed from his arms as he sat up. Somewhere above, the ground groaned. He looked up and for the first time saw it. The world tree. Not in its prime. Not as a monument. It loomed like a dead god hunched over a broken world. Its limbs were bare, leafless spires of petrified wood that reached into a pale sky. Cracks ran along its trunk like black veins, leaking nothing as if even its sap had forgotten how to flow. He crawled out from beneath the roots. Soil clung to his skin like memory. When he reached the surface he gasped. The air was thick with decay, sweet, rotten, warm. Around him, elder fallow stretched like a forgotten cathedral. Houses grown into tree hollows, once living bridges sagging between branches. Moss-covered walkways led to nowhere. The air buzzed with insects that didn't belong. His stomach twisted. He fell forward and vomited. What came out wasn't bile, it was dark green, thick like syrup, flecked with pieces of shredded bark. He blinked, shaking, then looked at his arm. A faint glow pulsed beneath the skin. Veins but not blood. He stumbled to a half-buried stone wall and rested his back against it. A whisper passed through the roots beneath him. He didn't hear it. He felt it. Images. Emotions. Memory echoes. A child laughing beneath golden branches. A grove burning under a purple sun. Screams swallowed by vines. A name, his name, almost spoken then drowned again. He closed his eyes and whispered, "What am I?" The wind answered with silence. Then he heard something else. A scraping. Clicking. Leaves shifting where no wind blew. From the shadows between two collapsed bridges something emerged. Its legs were jointed like a spider's, but made of gnarled bark and thorn. Its body pulsed with sap and fungus. Petals unfurled along its back, red, pulsing like a flower pretending to be flesh. Spineback crawler. It hissed. He tried to run but his body failed him. The world tilted. His knees gave way. The creature leapt. And something beneath him screamed. Not a voice. Not his own. The roots beneath the soil surged, erupting in a coil of green fury. A vine thick as his arm snapped upward, spiked with thorns. It speared the creature mid-air, driving it into a crumbling wall with a wet, cracking crunch. The creature twitched, then stilled. Silence returned. His hands shook. The vine that had saved him began to wither, curling like a dying snake, crumbling to dust. His heartbeat thundered, and with it, somewhere deeper, the world tree stirred. He didn't know how he knew. He simply did. A soundless creak through the canopy. A rustling breath in a forest that hadn't breathed in decades. As the spineback crawler died, the tree exhaled. And for a moment, so did he. He stood, barely, and walked through the ruins. Time blurred. His feet bled then healed. Light faded. The sky above turned a strange hue of gold and green. Every so often he thought he heard laughter or weeping or both. Eventually he collapsed beside a half-toppled shrine wrapped in ivy. He didn't hear the footsteps until they were close. Soft, careful. Almost curious. A shadow fell across his face. He opened his eyes to a girl no older than 16, wearing a cloak stitched from living moss and crowned with tiny mushrooms. She tilted her head. "You're not one of the hollow-born," she said softly. Her voice sounded like wet soil after rain. She crouched beside him and touched his chest, her eyes widening. She felt the seed, the heartbeat, the leaf that hadn't yet unfurled. "You're new." He tried to speak, only coughed. Her hand trembled slightly but she didn't pull away. "Don't die yet," she whispered. "You just bloomed." And then the dark took him again. There was warmth. Not the kind that filled rooms or wrapped around a blanket, but something soft and living, tucked beneath the bones. Something that pulsed in time with the earth itself. Whrrrm opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above was woven from tangled roots and bioluminescent mushrooms. They blinked faintly in shades of blue and green, like sleeping eyes scattered across the bark. He was lying on a bed made of moss, wrapped in thick layers of leaf-padded cloth. A strange scent filled the air, damp, herbal, almost sweet. A small fire crackled nearby, flickering low and pale. Not flame exactly, more like softly glowing spores held aloft in a bowl of smooth stone. He moved. Pain greeted him, sharp and stubborn. His chest burned where the seed pulsed inside, beating not just with his heart, but with something older. "You're awake." The voice came from beside the fire. She sat cross-legged, carefully grinding a dried mushroom into powder. Her cloak was gone, revealing a tunic woven from mycelium thread, with tiny spores stitched like buttons along the sleeves. Her hair was dark, her skin pale under a sheen of forest light. One eye was green. The other shimmered faintly violet. "You were out for 2 days," she said, not looking up. "Most people don't survive the hollow-born sleep. Guess you're not most people." Whrrrm opened his mouth. No words came. He tried again. His voice cracked. "Where am I?" "Beneath the tree," she said, matter of fact. "In the old roots. Elderthalo. Or what's left of it." She finished grinding the mushroom and poured the powder into a wooden flask. A faint hiss rose from it. She sniffed it, frowned, added something green, then sealed the top. "My name's Mira," she said, finally turning to him. "Mira Spore Light." He blinked, trying to make sense of everything. I think I died." "You did," she said casually. "Or something like it." He stared. She tilted her head. "Your veins glow. That's not normal." Whrrrm looked down. The light beneath his skin had dimmed, but hadn't vanished. Tiny, web-like strands of green still pulsed along his arms, converging at his chest. He pressed his palm over his heart. It thumped once, deep and slow. "You've got a seed," she said softly. He looked at her. "You know what it is?" She shrugged. "No. But I can feel it. I touch roots. They whisper sometimes. That thing inside you? It's not dead. That's all I know." Whrrrm sat up slowly. The pain was bearable now. "Why did you help me?" She hesitated. "Then, you bled into the ground and the ivy bloomed." He stared. "That doesn't happen anymore," she added. "Not in this place." They sat in silence for a while. The fire hissed. A tiny mushroom near the wall unfolded, blooming in slow motion, then sealing shut again. "You're not from here," Mira said finally. Whrrrm shook his head. "I don't know where I'm from." "That's not what I meant," she said. "You feel different. Like old things remembered you. The tree doesn't breathe for just anyone." Whrrm's hand curled into the moss. "The tree, it's dying." "It's been dying for years," Mira said. "Ever since the ley roots cracked. The Bloomguard tried to save it. Then the thorn veil came. Now it's all rotting ghosts." He stared at her. "Ley roots?" Mira leaned forward, drawing a quick symbol in the ash beside the fire, 3 lines curved like a river, interwoven with vines. "The veins beneath the world," she said. "Magic runs through them like water. The trees, the land, even the monsters need them. And when they break..." She stopped. Outside something creaked. Whrrm's eyes sharpened. The sound was low, rhythmic. Heavy. Mira stood up, moving to a narrow gap in the root-woven wall. She peeked out, silent. Then she stiffened. "Stay down," she whispered. He did. Something passed outside. Heavy footfalls. Muffled gurgles. Wet clicking. The fire dimmed. Through a small knothole Whrrm caught a glimpse, just enough. It was humanoid. What? But its limbs had been twisted, stretched. Branches pierced through its flesh like broken spears. Fungal growths pulsed across its shoulders. One eye glowed amber, the other was a hollow bloom filled with teeth. It sniffed the air. Whrrm held his breath. Then just as silently it moved on, limping back into the trees. When it was gone, Mira returned to the fire. Her shoulders were tense. "Hollowborn," she said quietly. "The forest made them from the dead. Or maybe the dead made them from the forest. Doesn't matter." He swallowed. "They hunt. They feed," she said. "On anything warm." She sat again, but the calm in her eyes had cracked a little. "You'll need to leave soon," she said. "If they found you once, they'll find you again." Whrrm nodded, unsure of anything except that she was right. "I don't have a weapon." "You have something better," she said, staring at his chest. "You've got a seed. I've seen what that vine did to the crawler." He looked at his hand. "I didn't control it." "You will." He hesitated. How? Mira smiled faintly, then stood and walked to a shelf carved into the root wall. She pulled down a small satchel and tossed it to him. Through pain, she said. And practice. And probably more pain. Whrrrm caught the satchel. Inside were dried roots, seed pods, and a single smooth crystal wrapped in leaf linen. She moved to the door and looked back. I'll show you the grove in the morning, she said. If you're still alive. Then she left. Whrrrm sat alone by the dimming fire. The seed pulsed once more. He didn't know what he was. But the roots remembered, and they would teach him. One lesson at a time. Morning came without sunlight. Instead, the canopy above filtered dim green light through layers of mist and moss, painting the grove in a half-dream of color. The forest didn't wake with birdsong, it breathed. Quietly. As if uncertain it should keep doing so. Whrrrm sat alone by the dying fire, chewing the last of the bitter root Mira had left him. It tasted like soil and something older, ash maybe. His muscles ached, but his body felt stronger than it should. The pain from the past 2 days had receded. Beneath the soreness something was growing. The seed pulsed faintly in his chest, like a second heart trying to learn the rhythm of the first. Footsteps padded softly behind him. Mira appeared, carrying a satchel and a gourd of cloudy water. She didn't speak. Just set them beside him and sat in the moss a few feet away. Drink slowly, she said. He did. The water tasted strange, infused with spores and something floral, but it soothed the burn in his throat. After a while she spoke again. I used to come here as a child. Before the rot. He looked up. The tree was still whispering then, she continued. The grove sang at night. You could walk without watching your step. Whrrrm said nothing. Mira stood and gestured for him to follow. Come. You want to learn. This is where we begin. They crossed a hanging root bridge draped in moss and lichen, winding through the upper hollows of Elderthalo's skeletal remains. The deeper they walked, the quieter it became. Not silent. Just listening. The trees here were twisted but not dead. Vines shifted lazily. Flowers opened and closed with no rhythm, as though confused by the season. Strange stones hummed faintly in patches of glowing moss. Mira led him to a wide clearing surrounded by pale trees with bark like bone. At the center, a pool of water sat still and dark. Around it, several strange plants grew, thick-stemmed, thorned, some tipped with tendrils or colored bulbs. The grove, she said simply. She still remembers. Whrrrm stepped forward and felt it instantly. Roots beneath the earth shifted to acknowledge him. Leaves turned slightly as if leaning closer. He breathed in and something breathed back. I've only seen this happen once before, Mira said, watching him. When the Trent Elder Rin passed through. Whrrrm moved to the edge of the pool. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the cracked sky through the canopy. What do I do? You listen. He closed his eyes. Time passed. Minutes. Maybe longer. Beneath him the world hummed. He could feel the soil. Not just its presence but its memory. Where it had once been warm. Where roots had once danced. Where death had seeped in like smoke. He reached with his mind, not with thought but instinct. The verdant seed pulsed in his chest. A vine stirred beside him. It sprouted from the ground, slowly, cautiously. A thin tendril with barbed ends and tiny leaves. Whrrrm raised his hand. The vine twitched. He moved his fingers slightly, and the vine mirrored the motion, jerky, uncertain. He focused. The vine slashed to the side, tearing a gash in the moss. Then collapsed. Blood welled from his nose. He staggered, clutching his head. Easy, Mira said suddenly at his side. You forced it. You have to invite. He nodded, breathing hard. You're not commanding nature, she said softly. You're asking it to grow. He sat again, more slowly this time. Let the pain pass. Then tried again. This time he didn't think of vines or weapons or enemies. He thought of warmth. Of shelter. Of something growing because it wanted to. The seed pulsed. From the soil, a cluster of soft green shoots rose gently. No thorns. No violence. Just life. Myra's expression softened. There. Now shape it. He thought of defense. The shoots hardened slightly. Bark formed along the stems. They twisted around one another, forming a crude but living wall. Then, without being asked, the roots curled into the earth beneath it, anchoring the barrier. It wasn't strong, but it was a start. He slumped back, exhausted but breathing steadily. Mira crouched beside the structure. Not bad. Not graceful but not bad. He smiled faintly. Then the earth shifted. It started as a vibration beneath the roots. Subtle. Barely there. But Whrrrm felt it, not with his ears but through the seed. He stood slowly. Mira had already turned toward the north edge of the grove, staring into the trees. "You feel that?" She nodded. "What is it?" "A tear," she said quietly. "The ley root is fracturing nearby." Pause. "A bloom rift." Whrrrm swallowed. "Do they always happen like this?" "Not always," she said. "But when the roots scream, something's trying to claw through." She turned to him. "You're not ready for a rift." "Not yet." He nodded. "But you'll still have to see it." He frowned. "Why?" "Because you're not growing fast enough," she said almost coldly. "Pain, remember?" They traveled with caution. Mira moved silently, navigating by instinct and scent. Whrrrm followed, feeling the world react to each step. Leaves turned as he passed. Spores floated toward him, not away. Even the insects watched from branches, unmoving. They arrived at the rift an hour later. It hadn't opened fully, but the ground was already bleeding light. A crack ran through the earth like a wound. From within, vines churned, wrong vines. Too fast. Too sharp. They thrashed as if angry, trying to tear their way into the world. The air was thick with rot. "This is a newborn rift," Mira said. "If it finishes opening, a whole bloom beast nest will push through." Whrrrm watched it move. His seed pulsed with something like warning, something old and afraid. He stepped closer. Mira grabbed his arm. "Don't. If it senses verdancy, it'll open faster." He froze. The rift hissed, then stilled. They waited. Watched. After a few tense minutes, the movement slowed. The rift pulsed once, then stopped churning. "Dormant," Mira whispered. "For now." They backed away step by step. Back at the grove, Whrrrm sat again, his thoughts heavy. "That thing, it felt like it knew me." "It did," Mira said. "You're part of the old system. The rifts, they remember what the world tried to bury." He didn't respond. She sat beside him in the moss. "You'll need more than vines next time," she said. "You'll need instincts." He nodded. "I'll teach you. If you want." "I do." A long silence passed between them. Then Mira leaned back and looked at the sky through the canopy. "You bleed like the old world," she said. He closed his eyes. "I think I was planted to bring it back." The rift did not sleep for long. Whrrrm sensed it before he saw it, like a splinter under the skin of the world. A slow, pulsing wrongness that pressed against the edge of thought. The forest grew still again, and not in reverence. This silence was taut, like a string drawn too tight. He stood alone at the edge of the grove, arms buried to the wrist in soil, trying to summon the same calm he had found the day before. It wouldn't come. The vines stirred sluggishly beneath his fingertips, slow and uncertain. He tried again, shaping a wall of thorns the way Mira had shown him. It collapsed after 3 seconds, the roots crumbling to dust. He exhaled sharply, sweat prickling his skin. Again. His own voice sounded hollow. Frustrated. The seed pulsed dully in his chest. He dug his hands back into the moss. Mira returned at dusk. Her cloak was soaked, spore powder staining the edges. She carried a satchel and a tight expression. "It's starting." Whrrrm looked up. "The rift?" She nodded. "It's waking." He stood, heart already pounding. "How bad?" "Bad," she said. "Too fast. It shouldn't be growing this quickly." She tossed him a dried root. We go in 15. He didn't ask questions. Just chewed and swallowed, the bitter taste flooding his senses. As he did, he noticed something odd. The seed pulsed faster, reacting to her urgency. Not just with emotion. It was feeding off her tension, mimicking it, accelerating its own rhythm. He flexed his fingers. The glow beneath his veins brightened slightly. Mira glanced at him. "You're feeling it too, huh?" He nodded. She paused, as if choosing her words. "You're connected to more than just the roots, Whrrrm. The rifts feel you same as the trees do. It'll notice you before it notices me. Then I'll lead it away. You'll die." He said nothing. She handed him a satchel. "Not today." The rift had split wider. Where once there had been a single crack in the earth, now there was a wound. A pit. A mouth. It pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, vines writhing around the rim like nerves twitching before the blade. The clearing around it had changed. Trees near the edge were already mutating, bark splitting open with fungal pustules, leaves stiffening into needle blades. The soil reeked of death and something darker. And then it moved. A long, wet sound echoed up from the rift. Roots pushed upward, but these were not plants. They were flesh roots, long, meaty cords wrapped in thorns and tooth-like bone plates. They lashed the air, searching. Renro crouched behind a fallen log, watching. Mira was on the other side, crouched low, clutching a flask filled with glowing spores. The first creature emerged. At first glance it looked human. Then it stood fully and the illusion shattered. It had no face, just a skull covered in stretched bark with eyes grown shut by moss. Its chest was open, hollowed into a spore nest. Arms too long. Fingers like cracked antlers. Bloom spawn, Mira whispered across the gap. Minor. Fast. Fragile. But not alone. More emerged. Half a dozen. Then more. Some crawled on all fours. Others hung upside down from branches, moving like insects. A few hadn't finished forming, trailing tendons and vine flesh behind them like broken roots. The rift was birthing an army. Renro reached for the ground. The seed pulsed. His vines responded. He shaped a bramble wall, thin, not strong but enough to split their advance. It rose between two rocks just as the first bloom spawn leapt forward. It hit the wall midair, screamed and collapsed in a heap of thorns. The others turned, screeching, sensing something new. They saw him. The forest screamed. They came in waves. The first group hit hard and fast, claws raking across the moss. Renro dove backward, rolling behind a thick root, shaping a whip of vine with one hand. He lashed out, catching the nearest creature across the face. It shrieked but didn't stop. The second whip cracked sideways, tangling two of them long enough for Mira to hurl a flask. It exploded in a cloud of spores and fire. The scent was acrid, like burnt mushrooms and blood. "Get higher ground," she yelled. Renro ran, ducking through twisting branches. Two bloom spawn followed, silent but fast. He reached a gnarled oak, threw out his hand and the vines obeyed. They surged upward, lifting him onto the branch like a slingshot. He landed hard but stable, gasping. Below, the creatures hissed and clawed at the trunk but wouldn't climb. He had seconds. He closed his eyes and reached again, not for the seed but for the grove. For the roots. He felt them. Hungry. Angry. He whispered. Grow. The earth answered. 4 vines shot upward like spears, impaling the 2 bloom spawn below. They didn't scream. Just twitched and stopped. Mira reappeared, cloak smoking from another explosion. You good? He nodded. Because the big one's coming. They felt it before they saw it. The ground pulsed. The trees leaned away. Then, dragging itself from the rift like a corpse born of mud and magic, came the fleshroot guardian. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its limbs wrapped in cords of living wood and muscle fiber. Its head was a hollow stump filled with teeth. On its back, glowing pods throbbed like eggs, leaking black sap. It bellowed. The trees shook. Renro stepped down from the branch. Mira met him at the base. You can't fight that, she said. I don't think I have a choice. You'll die. Then I'll die trying. He stepped forward. The guardian charged. Everything blurred. It moved faster than its size should allow. Renro barely dodged the first strike. Its arm shattered a fallen tree in one blow. He rolled, summoned a vine, too slow. The creature kicked him across the grove. He hit the ground, rolled, coughed blood. The seed pulsed wildly. He reached for the roots. Desperate. They answered. Vines erupted beneath the guardian's feet, not to bind it but to hold him. The earth shaped around his body, cradling him. Not to protect. To plant. He felt it. The soil entered his skin. The pain was sharp but not cruel. And then the seed bloomed. For a moment, everything turned green. Time slowed. He could see the creature's limbs moving. The way the pods on its back shifted. The way its weight leaned into the strike. He could feel the wind through the roots. He stood, not with muscle but with the forest wool behind him. He raised both hands. Vines shot upward, not from him but around him. Dozens. They wrapped the guardian mid-leap, pulling it off balance. It roared. He moved forward, vines dancing like limbs. One wrapped his arm. Another shaped a shield across his shoulder. The guardian slammed into the ground and Renro followed, whipping one hand across its back. The pods burst. Black sap rained down, but missed him. The vines shielded him. He didn't command them. They moved with him. He jumped back. The guardian stood, limping, leaking from its back. Mira shouted something but he couldn't hear. The world was filled with the sound of roots singing. The final strike came from below. The ground split open and a giant bloom of thorned roots surged upward, impaling the creature through the chest. It spasmed, then fell. Dead. Silence returned. Renro fell to one knee, panting. The vines around him slowly wilted. The seed dimmed, calming. Mira approached, wide-eyed. I thought you. He looked up. I didn't. She crouched beside him. You didn't control that. He shook his head. They did. Pause. You're part of it now, she whispered. The forest. He looked at his hands. Bark covered his forearms. His veins still glowed. He wasn't sure where his body ended and the grove began. And for the first time he wasn't afraid. He was becoming something else. Something the world had forgotten. The creature was still there when the sun tried to rise. Dead, yes, but not gone. Its corpse stretched across the grove like a fallen altar, thick with rot and sap and broken pods. The air buzzed with insects drawn to its slow decay. Whrrrm stared at it, unmoving, crouched at the edge of the grove with dirt still clinging to his skin. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes he saw the same thing. Green. Everywhere. Smothering. Loud. Alive. It hadn't felt like power. It had felt like drowning in something that wanted him, but not gently. Not kindly. Just as soil wanted a body. He touched his chest. The seed was quiet now. Come. Dormant maybe. Or just waiting. Mira sat a few feet away, her knees drawn up to her chest. She'd said nothing for hours. She didn't have to. The grove had changed. The trees leaned inward now, their bark darker. Roots pressed above the ground in new places, like they were reaching to be closer to him. It made his skin crawl. You're not in control, Mira said finally. He didn't answer. She nodded to the creature. That wasn't you. Not all the way. I know. It's dangerous. He looked at her. You still saved me. I saved the grove, she said flatly. And maybe you. But I'm not sure what you are yet. He winced at that. Mira exhaled. You're not strong, Whrrrm. Not really. You survived. That's different. I know, he said again more quietly. A long silence stretched between them. The wind moved through the trees in slow waves like breath. I want to learn, he said. She looked at him, unreadable. I don't want that thing saving me again unless I ask it to. The next few days passed without battle, but not without pain. Whrrrm trained. It wasn't grand. It wasn't fast. Most of the time it wasn't even magical. Mira gave him tasks. Most seemed beneath him at first. Grow one vine across a fallen log. He failed. Over and over. His connection to the verdant seed didn't obey simple thoughts. If he pushed too hard, the vine snapped. If he hesitated, it refused to sprout. He learned to listen to the soil. To breathe with it. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. When he forced the growth, the plant withered or turned black. When he focused too hard on shaping it into a weapon, the vine resisted. It's not a tool, Mira told him. It's a living thing. You're not using magic. You're growing trust. He bled from the thorns more than once. His arms ached. His chest burned. He slept poorly. Dreams came in pieces, roots tangling through cities, forests burning, voices calling names he didn't know. Sometimes he woke gasping, the taste of ash in his throat. But slowly something shifted. Not power. Pattern. On the sixth night, as twilight spilled through the canopy, Mira placed a hollowed stone bowl before him. Time to start understanding verdant flow, she said. He blinked. What's that? She tapped the bowl. Put your hand inside. Let the seed feel the water. He obeyed. The moment his fingers touched the surface, the bowl lit with veins of green. Not glowing but gently pulsing, mirroring his own. Verdant flow, she said, is the alignment between your will, the seed, and the environment. Without it, you're just throwing weeds around. Is that what happened during the fight? No. That was desperation. The seed took over. You nearly burned it out. He winced. This bowl is tuned to the grove, she continued. As long as you keep verdant flow stable, the water will remain still. He stared into it. It rippled instantly. Too much thought, she said. He tried again. The glow returned, then flickered. Too much will. Not enough feeling. Hours passed. By midnight he could hold the flow steady for only seconds at a time. It was harder than combat. Mira didn't praise him. But when she left him for the night, she said quietly, You're learning. That's more dangerous than power. Later that night something changed. As he rested, half asleep, hands still in the bowl, the water stilled. Not just smooth. Stopped. The world faded. And he fell. He wasn't dreaming. He was somewhere else. Beneath the roots, beneath the soil, deeper than death. A tunnel of ancient wood stretched in every direction. Walls made of bark and bone, ceiling thick with vines that moved like lungs. Light glowed from the walls in slow pulses. He felt weightless but grounded. Voices whispered, not in words but in pulses. Emotion. Memory. Not yours. Ours. He reached out to the nearest vine. His hand passed through it. The world blurred. He stood in a grove. But not the one he knew. This one was alive. The trees soared high, canopies bursting with every shade of green. Flowers bloomed in spirals. Beasts of leaf and root walked without fear. And in the center, a world tree still whole, still singing. He stepped forward. People moved among the roots, cloaked in moss, hands glowing with plant light. Verdant menders, root binders, children singing to vines that shaped in reply. He was invisible. A watcher. One man stood at the base of the tree, tall, dark-haired, hand pressed to the bark. His veins glowed like Whrrrm's, but brighter. The tree pulsed, and the man spoke. The seed remembers. Whrrrm tried to move closer, but the grove shattered. He woke gasping. The bowl was still. The water untouched. Mira sat across the clearing wide-eyed. You weren't breathing. He looked at his hand. It glowed faintly green. I saw it, he whispered. The verdant age. Mira stood, her face unreadable. That's not supposed to happen. It was a memory. Not mine. Someone else's. Seed-bearer? She asked quietly. He nodded. Mira turned away. Her voice shook slightly. There haven't been seed-bearers in centuries. Whrrrm stood slowly. I think the seed is remembering faster than I am. And that's not good, she said. Because memory isn't just truth. It's power. And wait. He looked to the trees. They were listening. And somewhere beneath the world the seed was watching. Moss had grown across his shoulders overnight. Not much. Just a thin layer, dew-wet, soft, curling over his collarbone like a cloak. He scraped it away with shaking fingers. Beneath the green, his skin was smooth. Too smooth. New bark just forming. It didn't hurt. But it didn't feel like him. Mira said nothing when she saw. She just handed him a vine cord, thick and flexible, the tip wrapped in bone. What's this? Your first real weapon, she said. Or it will be. The thorn lash wasn't a spell. It wasn't even a summon. It was a test of control. A living extension of the verdant seed. A weapon that could bind, cut, deflect, or disarm, but only if he could shape it while moving. It took him 2 days just to hold verdant flow while walking. 4 more to control a whip of vine without slicing his own leg. The cord was sensitive. It twitched to his thoughts but resisted bad instinct. Too aggressive, and it curled inward like a threatened snake. Too cautious, and it went limp, falling like dead roots. You're trying to force it again, Mira said, watching from the roots above. Don't. Breathe with it. He gritted his teeth, feeling the seeds pulse under his ribs. I'm trying. No, she said. You're still fighting it. By the 7th day he could summon the thorn lash from his palm. Not for long but enough to hold its shape. It formed like this. Vines unfurled from the base of his wrist. A bark wrapped the core, tightening into a cord. Thorn tips bloomed like bone petals at the end. It extended up to 4 meters when fully grown, and reacted faster than he could think, provided he was fully aligned. He spent hours cutting into logs, snapping branches mid-air, trying to snatch tossed pebbles from the air. Most of the time he failed. But one night, as Mira threw a fruit across the glade, fast, curved, Whrrrm flicked his wrist and the thorn lash struck true. The fruit exploded mid-flight. Mira raised an eyebrow. Better? Whrrrm smiled. The moss on his arm didn't. The next morning he woke with vines wrapped around his leg. Not summoned. Grown. From him. They'd rooted into the soil while he slept, spreading several meters. He pulled them free with effort but not pain. They tore loose like shedding skin. Myra's face turned pale when she saw. That's not normal, she said. No, Whrrrm agreed, voice quiet. Do you feel different? He didn't answer. Because he did. The verdant flow was getting easier. Too easy. Sometimes it shaped before he thought. Sometimes the vines moved before he moved. It wasn't obedience. It was anticipation. As if they were learning him. Or he was becoming them. That evening he sat alone beside the stone bowl again. The water shimmered under his palm, perfectly still. For the first time he saw his reflection, not just as he was, but as something other. Not bark-skinned. Not monstrous. Just older. Rooted. A man made of soil and silence. He blinked. The reflection was still there. Then it smiled, just slightly, without him moving. He yanked his hand away. The bowl shattered. Later, as he stood alone at the grove's edge, staring at the fallen bloom-spawn husks still slowly decaying, he heard it again. A voice beneath the roots. Soft. What? Root deep. We remember what you were. He turned. No one was there. You will be again. He stepped back. The trees didn't move. The vines didn't stir. But something beneath him shifted, and in the moss beside his foot, a tiny green seed cracked open without touch. Without warmth. It bloomed. Tiny. Pale. Watching. The air in the grove had changed. Whrrrm noticed it the moment he woke. The leaves didn't rustle. The moss didn't sway. Even the insects that usually buzzed at the edge of hearing had gone still. The forest was holding its breath. Mira stood at the base of the old root arch, arms crossed. A satchel rested at her feet, its surface moving subtly, something inside pulsing. What's in the bag? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped forward, handed it to him. It's called a combat seed. Whrrrm opened the flap. Inside, nestled in damp moss, was a small knotted sphere, green and brown, pulsing faintly. It didn't look like a seed. More like a living knot of veins and thorns. It's alive. Of course it is, she said. This is how the bloom guard trained their root binders. He looked at her, uncertain. You plant it in corrupted soil, Mira said. Then you stand in the bloom. You don't fight it. You grow with it. Or it kills you. What? The seed tests your verdant flow. Your instinct. It draws out the kind of power you'll need when the forest isn't helping you. She stepped closer. Last time the grove saved you. This time it won't. The trial site was 3 kilometers north, deep in a sunken glade Mira called the Ashroot Hollow. A place where one of the early bloom rifts had died, but left scars in the soil. The corruption was weaker here but not gone. The moss curled black around the edges of tree trunks. Flowers wept sap. Nothing grew naturally anymore. Whrrrm could feel it the moment they arrived. The seed in his chest pulled back slightly, like it was holding its breath. Mira gestured to the center of the hollow, where a circle of ash-ringed soil waited. He crouched, took the combat seed in both hands and planted it gently in the dirt. It didn't resist. It wanted to be planted. Once it starts blooming, Mira said, stepping back, you have until the second breath to bond with it. What happens after that? It tries to grow through you. Whrrrm gave her a dry look. Comforting. Pain is growth, she said. You asked for this. He stepped into the circle. The moment his foot touched the seed's resting place, it bloomed. There was no warning. Just light, green then red then pulsing white. Roots burst from the soil, spiraling around him, forming a cage that writhed like a heartbeat. Vines snapped and curled through the air, each tipped with hooked petals. The air turned thick. Too thick. Like breathing through soil. He dropped to one knee, arms raised. Called to the seed. No response. He reached for verdant flow. Nothing. The combat seed was flooding the flow with its own rhythm. Drowning him in it. Panic surged. His own vines refused to grow. His skin pulsed, bark-like patches rising on his arms, then fading again. Then something pierced his calf. A root. Small but sharp. It burrowed in. He screamed. Then something snapped. Not in the body. In the memory. The world vanished. He was standing in another time. Another grove. But this one was burning. The sky above was ash and cinders. Trees, once vibrant, now bled smoke. In the distance, a world tree was falling, its limbs crashing in slow, grieving silence. People ran. Not from the fire. From each other. Verdant warriors, root binders, thorn callers, bloom walkers, fought among the trees, shouting, bleeding. Their vines strangled their own kind. Their summons burned cities. In the center stood a man with glowing bark arms, wrapped in living thorns. His eyes were moss-colored and ancient. He reached into the soil, pulled a vine from the earth, and shaped it into a noose. They broke the cycle, a voice said beside Whrrrm. And they paid for it. He turned. A figure stood beside him. Vaguely human, wrapped in rotted robes, its face hidden behind a wooden mask shaped like a cracked leaf. You are not the first seed bearer, it whispered. But you may be the last. Whrrrm tried to speak. But the ground swallowed him. He awoke screaming. The trial vines had pierced his legs, wrapped his wrists, spread across his ribs like an open hand. But they'd stopped growing. The combat seed had accepted him. Barely. The roots retracted, slithering back into the soil. The bloom folded in on itself and crumbled, leaving only a small thorn left behind, black, smooth, shaped like a curved fong. Mira stepped forward and picked it up. Your first bond shard. She handed it to him. He took it and felt it click against the seed in his chest. A new path had opened. That night, as he washed the ash and blood from his skin in the stream, Whrrrm saw it again. A patch of bark on his shoulder that hadn't gone away. Not for days. He scratched it lightly. It bled spores. Not red. Not green. Pale white. Floating. They didn't drift up. They drifted toward him, then disappeared into his chest. He didn't tell Mira. Not yet. She was already watching him differently. Carefully. The next day he returned to the grove alone. And he wasn't alone. There at the tree line, half hidden behind a wall of fog, stood a figure. Tall. Wrapped in root-covered armor. Its face was shrouded in vines. In one hand, it held a twisted staff grown from bonewood. Its eyes glowed, dimly. It said nothing. But Whrrrm felt the seed respond in his chest. Fear. The figure turned, stepped into the trees and vanished. The forest didn't breathe again for hours. Mira didn't speak for a long time after he told her what he saw. They sat near the stream, the air still damp with morning mist. She watched the water ripple around a moss-covered stone, fingers curled around a flask of cooling tea. Describe it again, she said finally. Whrrrm closed his eyes. Tall. Covered in root armor. Didn't move like a person. The staff was part of its arm, I think. Eyes, green. But not alive. Did it speak? No. Did you hear anything from the roots when it appeared? Fear. Mira exhaled slowly. Then it was real. He looked at her sharply. You know what it was? I know the stories. They walked deeper into the grove, Mira leading him to a long-forgotten stone tablet, overgrown and half-buried beneath creeping moss. She cleared the surface slowly, reverently. Symbols carved into the bark-stained stone came into view. A figure etched in profile. Cloaked. Twisted. Surrounded by broken trees. These are the verdant reapers, she said softly. They were seed-bearers once. Heroes, guardians, until something broke in them. Or bloomed wrong. Whrrrm stared. They went too deep, Mira said. Into the ley roots. Into the old memories. Their minds couldn't carry it. Was that what I saw? No, she said. You saw one of their shadows. Shadow? They don't die. They don't rot. They just become part of the forest. Whrrm's throat tightened. Can it be killed? She didn't answer. Later that day, as the wind shifted and the grove felt more still than usual, Whrrm heard something new through the roots. Whispers. Not the deep, slow pulses of memory he had come to expect. These were scattered, frantic. Half sentences, half thoughts. A kind of panic and pain. He followed it. The scout lay between two twisted tree roots, his body half covered in creeping moss and splinters of bark. He had once worn bloomguard armor, though most of it had fused to his skin. One eye was glowing softly green. The other had gone black with spore rot. He looked up as Whrrm approached, barely lifting his head. You're new, the scout rasped. I can hear it in your seed. Whrrm knelt. You're a verdant user. Was. Not anymore. He coughed and a handful of tiny white spores drifted from his mouth. He didn't react. They send us to the rifts, the scout said. To hold the line. To die quietly. Where are the others? Gone. Consumed. Root-bound and left to feed the trees. Whrrm swallowed. Why didn't you turn? The scout grinned, broken teeth flecked with moss. Because I remember what it was like to be human. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a shard of wood, pale, flat, carved with a spiral. This is what they gave us. A guide to balance verdant flow when it fractures. You'll need it. You're already cracking. Whrrm took it. The moment it touched his skin, the seed responded. A new branch of knowledge blooming behind his eyes. Instructions. Focus paths. Breathing patterns. Why help me? Whrrm asked. The scout's eyes dimmed. Because I saw what you're becoming. Then his chest stopped rising. And he turned to bark. That night Whrrm tried. He stood in the grove's training hollow, thorn lash coiled at his side. The guide shard rested in his palm. He focused. Not on the vine. Not on his hand. But on two flows at once. Left hand, the shape of restraint. Right hand, the shape of aggression. Two vines unfurled. They flickered, unstable, pulsing with too much energy. One snapped against a tree. The other retracted violently. He grit his teeth. Sweat rolled down his temple. He tried again. The thorn lash split. It became chain bloom, a three-pronged vine whip that arced like lightning, each strike blooming open at the point of impact with petal thorns. It looked beautiful. It lasted 3 seconds. Then it exploded. The vines wrapped around his arms and struck him in the back, slamming him into the moss. He gasped, dazed, and rolled over. Mira stood above him, arms crossed. You tried to skip steps again. I didn't. You're still growing. Don't cut yourself open to bloom faster. He sat up, wincing. I wanted to be ready. She sighed. Ready means control, not performance. The next day he practiced again. Only one vine. One motion. No bloom. And this time it held. But the forest wasn't finished with him yet. That night he stood at the edge of the stream watching the water. The bark on his shoulder had cracked open. From within a new sprout had emerged. Small. Pale. Alive. It pulsed in rhythm with his heart. He reached to pull it. But something, not instinct, stayed his hand. Behind him, in the shadow of a willow whose leaves had turned silver, the verdant reaper watched again. It didn't move. It didn't speak. But when the wind passed between them, Whrrrm felt the warning. This is the path, it whispered from nowhere. Grow carefully. And then it was gone. The forest had grown quiet around him again. Not with peace. With distance. It had been 3 days since the sprout appeared on his shoulder, pale and trembling with its own rhythm. It hadn't grown larger. But it hadn't withered either. Mira had seen it once and said nothing. That silence worried him more than any warning might have. She'd stopped calling him for training. Stopped checking his verdant flow. She still offered food, still sat nearby in the evenings, but the warmth had gone. The grove too had changed. Vines no longer stirred when he passed. The moss beneath his feet no longer shifted to catch him when he stumbled. It was as if something ancient in the roots had seen what bloomed inside him, and now looked away. He stood alone beneath a stone-arched rootway, the satchel over his shoulder packed with dried root bread, 2 spore flasks, and the thorn lash curled tight against his belt. The bloom rift lay to the southeast. A minor one, no more than a tear in the land, Mira had said. Leave it, she told him. You're not ready. Let it starve and close on its own. But something in the seed pulled him there. Or maybe the sprout did. It pulsed when he thought about the rift. Not excited. Not afraid. Hungry. The rift was half-formed. Still young. It festered beneath a grove of dead birch trees, their white bark blackened with old burns. The air was dry, brittle. The grass was pale blue, curled into claws. Insects clicked softly in the underbrush but never emerged. Whrrrm crouched low, just beyond the rift's glow. It wasn't a gate. Not yet. Just a wound like the others, slowly pulsing open, spewing faint tendrils of verdant corruption. He felt it before he stepped inside. Like walking into his own chest. His seed thrummed. The sprout on his shoulder quivered with excitement. He stepped in. The world changed immediately. Sound dropped away. The rift warped reality just enough to make everything wrong. Trees hung sideways from cliff faces. Roots twined into the sky like smoke. The light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. He drew his thorn lash but didn't summon it yet. His fingers flexed, ready. The air smelled of sap and blood. And then he saw it. A shape. Human. Kneeling near a cluster of crimson flowers that weren't flowers at all, open mouths with teeth made of petals. The man, or what had once been a man, turned slowly. His face was bark. His eyes root-knotted and lidless. His skin glistened with dew, and leaves had grown from the edges of his ribs. His voice when it came was soft. You were the seed, he said. But not the roots. Whrrrm tensed. Who are you? A gardener, the creature said. Of what's left. It stood slowly without threat. I was once like you. Bloomguard. Proud. Alone. We thought ourselves above the cycle. Thought we could wield the forest without feeding it. His feet, bare and bark-skinned, left wet prints as he walked. You cling to shape, he said, tilting his head. You still call yourself human. I am human. The creature smiled. Then why does the sprout speak when you do not? Whrrrm stiffened. The sprout pulsed. And for a moment, just a heartbeat, he felt a whisper at the edge of his thoughts. Let me answer. He stepped back. Leave, he said. I cannot, the creature replied. This is my root grave. I am part of it now. But you may yet choose. It opened its arms. Join the song. Let the forest think for you. You will never fear again. The vines around it surged, rising like cobras. Whrrm's whip snapped into his hand. I think I'd rather bleed. The fight was fast and strange. The creature didn't attack like a monster. It sang. Soft, rhythmic words. With every line the roots near him moved, pulled toward him. The seed opens. The bark bends. Let the hollow bloom again. Each verse brought more roots to life. They wrapped the air, blocked the light, twisted the terrain. Whrrrm struggled to find footing. His thorn lash cracked out, cutting one vine then two, but the moment he struck, new ones grew back thicker. He shifted focus. Verdant flow. He grounded his breath. Left hand, defense. Right hand, strike. He lashed out. First vine, precision strike. It severed the arm of a root beast crawling toward him. Second vine, wide sweep. It cleared space around his legs, giving him room to move. He focused again. Tried to summon chain bloom, only a partial version. 2 vines. Just 2. He couldn't hold it. The whip split, but then twisted. One vine attacked the enemy. The other curved mid-strike, and lashed back toward him. He rolled under it, barely dodging. His wrist stung. Blood welled. The sprout pulsed. And he felt it again. Interference. The sprout had redirected part of his will, without permission. He grit his teeth, forced it down. No, he whispered. Not like this. The bark beneath his skin cracked, faint green light spilling from the seams. He exhaled. Slow. Found the rhythm. And struck true. The final blow landed clean. Not because of strength. Because of clarity. He didn't shout. Didn't rage. He listened. And the forest responded, not loudly but enough. His vine wrapped around the creature's throat as it opened its arms again for one final hymn. He pulled tight. The creature didn't resist. I remember the sky, it whispered. Then it fell, its bark shell crumbling, the flowers beside it withering. Whrrrm knelt for a long time after that. The sprout on his shoulder twitched, once, then went still. He reached up, fingers trembling. Touched it gently. It didn't resist. But for the first time it felt aware. As if it had just seen what he was capable of, and would wait before trying again. When he returned to the grove, dusk was falling. Mira waited for him at the root bridge. Her expression was unreadable. You left without permission. I know. You could have died. I know. She looked at him for a long moment. Then nodded just once. You'll need to rest. We're going deeper next week. Into what? Into where the seed began. That night, Whrrrm stood by the stream again. He looked at the sprout. He didn't hate it, but he no longer thought of it as part of him. Just something he carried. For now. And maybe, if he was careful, he could grow stronger without letting it grow him. The forest deepened as they walked. This wasn't the same elder Thalo Whrrrm had come to know. The trees were taller here, older than memory. Their trunks weren't straight, but curved in spirals as if they'd grown through time instead of space. The air was thick with root mist, curling around their legs like breath. The grove had a heart. And they were walking toward it. Mira moved with quiet purpose, her eyes alert but unreadable. Whrrrm followed, silent. It had been 2 days since the bloom rift. Since the sprout tried to take his will. Since he'd chosen to kill a man who had once been like him. He hadn't told Mira everything. But he knew she already suspected. Why now? He asked. Mira didn't stop walking. Because the seed is waking. Whrrrm touched his chest, where the pulse of the verdant core had become steady. Not loud. But always there now. Is that why the forest stopped helping me? No. That's because it's watching. They arrived at the elder heart by dusk. A massive hollow beneath the roots of Elder Thalo's central tree, long sealed and overgrown. Vines curled down the entryway like curtains. The air was wet with ancient moisture. Inside, everything glowed green gold, like dusk made solid. Stone platforms spiraled around the hollow's edge, carved with symbols of the Bloomguard's old paths. This is where the first seed fell, Mira said. Before everything fractured. She pointed to the base of the chamber. There, half sunken in a cradle of roots, lay a body. Wrapped in moss and bark, its armor cracked open, vines grown through its ribcage. A helmet sat beside the skull, shaped like a blooming flower in reverse. Whrrrm stepped down slowly. The seed pulsed once. The sprout on his shoulder twitched. He knelt beside the corpse. There was no rot. No smell. The roots had preserved it. Reclaimed it. Carefully, gently, Whrrrm placed his hand against the chest plate. The world vanished. He stood on a battlefield of broken roots. The sky above was black with smoke. Trees burned. Groves bled. Before him stood the seed-bearer whose body he had touched. A woman. Tall, cloaked in green thorns, her eyes dim with exhaustion. She turned to him, not seeing him but remembering him. We thought we could wield it, she said. That the forest needed hands to shape it. Behind her, a village was dissolving. Not in fire, but in overgrowth. Vines swallowing homes. Bark blooming through stone. But we didn't serve the cycle. We harnessed it. She turned away. And so it turned on us. She walked forward into the vines. They closed behind her. Whrrrm gasped, stumbling back into the elder heart. Mira caught his arm. You saw it? He nodded. She was, like me. She was the first. Whrrrm sat beside the stone altar. She was wrong, he said softly. Mira said nothing. The glow in the chamber dimmed. The trees above shifted. Something was moving behind the bark. They descended lower into the hollow, following the spiral path until they reached the chamber's deepest root line. There, embedded in the wall, was a verdant bloom, a giant sealed flower of living bark easily 5 meters across. It pulsed faintly. Not with magic. With memory. What is it? Whrrrm whispered. Myra's voice was quieter than usual. A vault. A verdant vault. What's inside? She shook her head. None who came after the first ever opened it. Should we? We shouldn't even be here. But Whrrrm stepped closer. The seed pulsed faster. So did the sprout. He reached out. And the flower opened its first petal. Just one. Inside was a grove of light, not physical but spiritual. A place remembered by the seed, not the world. Visions flickered at the edges. Faces, cities, old oaths. He pulled his hand back. And the petal closed. Not time. Not yet. They climbed out in silence. When they reached the grove's edge again, the forest had gone still. Mira froze. So did Whrrrm. He felt it too. Presence. Not verdant. Not corrupted. But foreign. Metal boots had stepped where moss should be. Something had snapped a root and kept walking. They weren't alone. Later that night, Whrrrm and Mira circled the grove's perimeter. They found it near the east path, a sigil burned into bark. A verdant hunt brand. Whrrrm had heard of them. Mercenaries, treasure seekers, plant killers. Mira spat on the mark. They come for relics, she said. For root bone, seed shards, for the things that shouldn't be touched. Will they come here? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Whrrrm stood by the stream at midnight. The sprout on his shoulder had grown another inch. Its leaves glowed faintly. He whispered to it. I'm not your puppet. The sprout didn't respond. But it listened. They arrived at dawn, but the forest felt it hours before. The grove's canopy shifted like a warning breath, dew clinging heavier than usual. The roots curled tighter, the moss withdrew. Something foreign was coming, something that did not belong. Mira had already armed herself. Whrrrm stood beside her at the outer edge of Elderthalo, his thorn lash coiled tight, his seed pulsing slow but steady. There are 3 of them, she whispered. Maybe more behind. Verdant hunt. She nodded. They never come alone. And never without purpose. The first figure stepped between 2 trees, tall, lean, wrapped in green leathers reinforced with chitin plates grown from once living vines. A hollow horn bough rested across his back. A curved blade sheathed at his hip. The second came behind him, broader, armored with moss-dulled iron plates and root-forged gauntlets. He carried no visible weapon. He didn't need one. The third was the one who mattered. She was young, maybe 20, but her presence carved through the mist like flame through frost. Cloaked in a traveling mantle of woven leaf thread, a half-mask made of polished bark shaded the left side of her face. Her right eye, sharp and gold-flecked, saw everything at once. She carried no staff. No weapon. Only a thin vine-wrapped codex on her hip. She raised one hand in greeting. Bloomguard remnants, she said, voice calm. Didn't expect to find any of you still rooted. Mira stepped forward. You're trespassing. The woman bowed slightly. We're not here for blood. Just salvage. You know how this works. Myra's jaw tightened. Elder Hollow isn't a ruin. Then why does it smell like one? Whrrm's voice came quiet but clear. Because we're trying to make sure it doesn't stay that way. The woman turned her gaze to him. And paused. You're the one they've been whispering about, she said. The seed bearer. Whrrm didn't answer. She stepped closer, unthreatening but unblinking. You've got something old in your chest. I can feel it from here. You're leaking verdancy like a cracked root bottle. Still he didn't speak. She smiled faintly. I'm Kalen Vire. Senior Scouter, Hunt Division 3. My men and I are tracking relic signs. Something spiked near the grove. We thought it might be a wild bloom. Didn't expect a live seed. Myra's tone sharpened. And what do you plan to do with it? Kalen tilted her head. Study it. Measure it. Possibly neutralize it. Depends. Whrrm stepped forward. You think I'm a threat? I think you're an anomaly, she said. Which is worse. They walked together through the edge paths, Kalen inspecting flora, the tall scout sketching fast glyph notes onto his scroll pad. The armored one, silent, marked tree patterns with chalk dust that glowed when disturbed. Everything's growing too fast here, Kaelin murmured. Even the moss is 3 layers too thick. And this tree, this one's rotting from the inside and blooming from the outside. That doesn't happen unless someone's forcing verdant flow without balance. She turned to Whrrrm. You? He said nothing. She smiled again faintly. I'll be honest, seed bearer. I don't trust verdancy. Never have. My sister was taken by it, turned into a root walker when the ley root cracked beneath Telnash. So forgive me if I'm not here to kneel to the old ways. Mira stepped between them. Then leave. But Kaelin raised a hand. I'm not here to fight. She gestured to the center of the grove. Just one thing. A test. You say you're not a threat. Prove it. Whrrrm raised an eyebrow. How? They cleared a ring in the grove, a dueling circle once used by Bloomguard apprentices. Vines coiled back, moss receded, the old barkstones rising in a perfect oval. Kaelin stood at one end. Whrrrm at the other. No killing blows, she said. No summons. No rift magic. Just control. Flow. Whrrrm nodded. Mira muttered under her breath, don't take her lightly. She's fast. I won't. The duel began in silence. Kaelin didn't draw a weapon. Whrrrm didn't summon his whip immediately. He breathed. Left hand, brace. Right hand, flex. The thorn lash surged into his hand. Kaelin moved. Not forward, around. Fast. Her boots barely touched the moss. Her cloak shifted like a ripple. He snapped the whip, missed. She leapt over it, landing on a twisted root. She didn't attack. Just watched. Testing. He struck again, an arc toward her legs. She dodged. But only just. The third strike curved midair, a trick he'd practiced for days. It caught her side. Her cloak shredded. A shallow cut bloomed. She smiled. Not bad. Then she moved in earnest. She threw 2 vines of her own, not summoned but grown from seed blades in her sleeves. They wrapped like bolas, snapping toward his wrist. He rolled. The lash shattered one midair, redirected the other toward the bark wall. Back and forth they moved, her mobility, his precision. She outpaced him. He outthought her. When the match ended, neither stood at the center. They circled, both panting, neither bloodied. Kaelin lowered her arms first. Enough, she said. You've got control. More than most I've seen. Whrrrm nodded once. Mira stepped forward, arms crossed. So? Kaelin exhaled. We'll mark this grove neutral. For now. She turned back to Whrrrm. But watch yourself, seed-bearer. The forest may like you now. But it liked others before you too. And they're all dead. That night, Whrrrm sat by the stream. The thorn lash rested beside him. The sprout on his shoulder had curled inward, no longer pulsing. As if waiting. He didn't feel strong. But he felt stable. And in a world like this, that mattered more. The grove had grown restless since the duel. The vines no longer swayed in welcome when Whrrrm passed. The trees seemed taller now, but not in reverence. In judgment. As if watching to see whether their trust had been misplaced. Even Mira had grown distant. Not cold exactly. Just quiet. Her silences were heavier now, filled with things unsaid. She hadn't spoken much since Kaelin left. And when she did, it was careful. Controlled. Be careful who you let near your roots, she said one evening without looking at him. Some people carry fire in their footsteps, even when they speak in leaves. Kaelin returned on the 4th day. No escort. No armor. Just her travel cloak and the codex at her hip. She met Whrrrm and Mira in the outer clearing, arms folded, expression unreadable. This isn't a raid, she said. It's an offer. Whrrrm raised an eyebrow. You're not subtle. No time to be, Kaelin replied. Something's waking up beneath the deep-lying valley. A rift, but not like the ones we've seen. This one's old. Pre-fracture. Possibly verdant made. Myra's face darkened. Those were sealed. Kaelin nodded. They were. That's what makes this one dangerous. She pulled a folded scroll from her codex. Heavy, bound with root thread. This is a copy of an old Bloomguard document, she said. What's left of it? It mentioned something called the Whisper Bark Accord. Mira stiffened. Whrrrm watched them both. What is it? Mira didn't answer. Kaelin did. A pact, she said. Made near the end of the verdant collapse. Between the last Bloomguard Council, the seed-bearers, and something else. The trees called it the listening root. A sentience beneath the ley roots. Whrrrm frowned. I felt something under the roots. We all have, Kaelin said. But your seed is old. Possibly first cycle. Which means you might be the clause this accord was built around. A clause? Kalen looked directly at him. The accord was designed to remain dormant unless a true bonded seed emerged again. If that happened, the one who carried it would be granted access to the vault beneath the rift. Whrrrm blinked. Why would they lock something down that deep? Because it was too powerful to destroy, Mira said softly. And too dangerous to leave alone. The silence that followed was thick with roots and tension. Kalen broke it first. We need to find that vault. Before someone else does. I'm offering a truce. Just for this. Mira glared. And what happens after? Kalen didn't flinch. That depends on what we find. They argued long into the night. Mira refused to trust her. Kalen refused to back down. Whrrrm listened. He weighed their voices. Their pain. Their fear. He thought of the vision of the seed-bearer walking into her own death. The one who had spoken of power as burden. And he made his choice. I'll go, he said. Both women turned to him. You're not ready, Mira said. Maybe not, Whrrrm said. But I'm part of this. The grove doesn't trust me. You're afraid of what I might become. But this seed, it's not going to wait for me to catch up. He looked at Kalen. I want your map. Later that night, alone beneath the oldest willow of the grove, he unrolled the scroll Kalen had given him. It was no simple guide. The map was etched with ley flow patterns, verdant pressure points and sealed root zones. Paths only accessible through seed resonance, meaning he'd need to harmonize his flow to match ancient frequencies. But at the center was the true prize. Deep rift, unopened, lined with verdant memory. Vault seal intact. Echo chamber beneath. Beside it, scrawled in faded glyph script. Only the root bound shall enter unbroken. Whrrrm traced the phrase with one finger. The sprout on his shoulder pulsed. He didn't sleep that night. The trees whispered too loudly. At first he thought it was wind. Then it formed syllables. Not words exactly, but impressions. Root thought. Emotional memory. Caution. Memory. Don't let the wound open. You are not whole. He pressed his hands to the soil. Tried to quiet the seed. Instead he was pulled under. He stood in a cavern of vines. The deep rift. He knew it instinctively, though it was larger than anything he had imagined. A cathedral carved from root and stone, glowing with sealed blooms and pulsing veins of green crystal. A voice whispered from the walls. The vault breathed still. But not alone. Something else waits inside. He awoke before dawn. Mira stood at the grove's edge, gear-packed, her expression unreadable. I still don't trust her, she said. But I trust you. That might be worse, Whrrrm said. Mira almost smiled. Then try not to prove me wrong. They departed at first light, Mira, Whrrrm and Kalen leading two scouts through the dying woods toward Deepline Valley. The seed pulsed all the while. And beneath it something listened. The Deepline Valley wasn't supposed to exist. At least not like this. It stretched for miles beneath a fractured canopy, where the sky broke apart in silent waves of distorted light, and trees bent inward instead of up, as if bowing toward some unseen root. The land was quiet. Too quiet. Even the wind avoided this place. Whrrrm walked at the front of the group now, the map Kalen had given him glowing faintly in his hand, its lines reacting to his presence. The seed pulsed with low, steady rhythm. With each step, the sprout on his shoulder grew more agitated, curling in and out of itself, vibrating beneath his skin like it wanted to speak. But he didn't listen. Not yet. Behind him, Kalen and Mira kept pace with tension rising between them like frost. Kalen moved confidently, but her posture had shifted. She didn't trust the ground here. Her boots left faint impressions in the moss that didn't rebound. She noticed. Reality's soft here, she muttered. Leyroot pressure is warping everything. This rift's been brewing too long. Myra's response was colder. It's not pressure. It's memory. This place isn't bending, it's remembering. Kalen smirked. Cute philosophy. Still gets you killed if your foot sinks through the wrong patch. Whrrrm spoke without turning. Both of you. Save it. Kalen raised an eyebrow. Mira actually looked faintly impressed. They reached the threshold route by dusk. It arched across the valley floor like a petrified bridge, 10 meters wide, grown from a fallen world tree's limb, hollowed by time and fossilized verdant resonance. At its base, the entrance. A sealed door of living bark and crystalline veins. It pulsed faintly with green light. 6 symbols ringed the doorframe written in spiral glyphs. Only the root-bound shall enter unbroken. Only the listening may wake the silence. Only the dreamer may plant the key. Kalen stepped forward. This is it. Mira knelt beside the glyphs. Her hand brushed one of the symbols. They're not just words. They're triggers. Whrrrm already knew. He could feel it. The seed inside him was responding to the glyphs, soft pulses guiding his breath, drawing him forward. The sprout curled backward. Fear. Kaelin turned to him. You're the dreamer. That's what they mean. This is your gate. Whrrrm nodded. I know. They formed a camp just inside the threshold root, protected by its arch and ringed with Myra's ward spores. The vault door didn't open with strength. It required submission. It required a dream. At midnight, Whrrrm sat alone at the edge of the gate. His hand rested against the center glyph. The seed pulsed once, then again, and he fell inward. He awoke in silence. The world was white. Not light. Not snow. Just white. And in the middle of it stood a grove that wasn't real. A memory grove. Trees frozen in bloom, their leaves unmoving. A pond so still it reflected nothing. Wind that moved without sound. And in the middle of the grove, himself. A version of him. Barefoot, bark spreading across his skin, the sprout on his shoulder now a full branch crowned with green flame. Whrrrm stepped forward. The other version watched him. It didn't speak. It didn't blink. But when Whrrrm reached it, he saw its eyes. They were empty. Voices filled the grove. Not spoken. Remembered? We used the seed to protect them. They burned us anyway. Verdancy was never pure. Only useful. The stronger the bond, the faster it grows through you. Do you still think this is about saving anything? You are the soil. You are the sacrifice. Whrrrm dropped to one knee. His breath caught. His vision blurred. The memories weren't just echoes, they were feeding into him. Overriding. He was becoming the seed's dream of him. And he refused. He slammed his palm to the memory ground. No. The voices stilled. The other Whrrrm, seed-grown, inhuman, took a step back. Whrrrm stood. I won't become your puppet. The memory grove flickered. Not a puppet, a voice whispered. A vessel. No, Whrrrm said again. I'll carry you. But I won't be you. The seed pulsed. For a long moment nothing happened. Then gently the other Whrrrm bowed. And crumbled. The trees turned to light. The pond shattered like glass. And the white world folded inward. He awoke on the ground, gasping. The vault door stood open. Mira knelt beside him, eyes wide. You were gone for hours, she said. Kaelin stood at the entrance, silent. The threshold glowed. Inside lay a stairwell of petrified roots, winding down into green darkness. Whrrrm stood, legs unsteady. The sprout on his shoulder was still. Not gone. But calm. Listening. And for the first time he felt it listening back. The vault's breath was warm. As Whrrrm stepped across the threshold, the scent of old wood and wet roots surrounded him. The air pulsed with living memory. Not life, but the imprint of it. Power stored not in stone or crystal, but in growth. In bloom. A staircase spiraled downward beneath his feet, carved from petrified root veins and bark bone. Strange veins of glowing plant fiber pulsed along the walls, guiding them down in slow, rhythmic pulses. Verdant flow lines. Behind him, Mira followed in silence. Her steps were careful, as if each one betrayed something sacred. Kaelin came last. She walked without reverence, only precision. Eyes sharp, codex open, sketching glyphs with her free hand. The vault closed behind them. No sound. Just the air thickening, welcoming them deeper. The first chamber opened wide. Massive vines curved into arches overhead, their blooms frozen mid-blossom, preserved by time and memory. Floating seed lights hovered in the air like drifting fireflies. 6 large stone roots formed a ring in the center of the room. Each pulsed in sequence. Whrrrm stepped closer, guided by instinct. Each root emitted a verdant frequency, a tone not heard but felt. He knelt, closed his eyes and reached out with his flow. Kaelin stepped forward. Be careful. Some of these vaults were designed to reject unbalanced seed-bearers. Mira hissed. And some were meant to teach them. Whrrrm ignored both. He focused. The seed in his chest responded, slightly, as if testing the rhythm. He aligned his breathing to the first pulse. Then the second. The roots shifted slightly, approving. But the third beat was broken. Unstable. Faintly wrong. He adjusted his own flow, not perfectly but close enough. A low chime sounded. The floor opened downward. This chamber stank of rot. The air was warm and wet, and the walls were alive with crawling vines, dark, thorned, and whispering. Bones lined the floor. Not human. Not beast. Bloom constructs, verdant-formed guards. long dead. At the center stood one still alive. A verdant bone tender, an ancient construct made from root-bound armor, ossified sap, and a hollow ribcage blooming with moss. Its eyes glowed faintly gold. It did not move as they entered. But the moment Kaelin stepped too close, it turned. Stop, Mira hissed. It's keyed to motion. Pattern-based. You can't just walk past it. Kaelin lowered her codex. Then what's the protocol? Whrrrm stepped forward. The construct turned to him, head tilting. The seed in his chest pulsed harder, brighter. The sprout on his shoulder vibrated in rhythm. Whrrrm raised his hand. Didn't speak. Didn't summon. He simply opened his flow, let it hum through the soil, the moss, the walls. The bone tender paused. Then it stepped aside. Whrrrm exhaled slowly. Kaelin stared at him. You didn't command it. No, he said. I resonated. The chamber was small, barely wide enough for all three of them. 6 root pillars ringed the edge, each containing a sealed memory pod, hollow bark flowers suspended in crystal sap. Inside each a face. Humanoid. Plant-bound. Frozen in time. Whrrrm approached the center where a pedestal of stone and living bark stood. As he touched it, a voice whispered, not from the roots but from within. One of us must speak truth. The three of them looked at each other. Kaelin raised an eyebrow. What does it mean? Myra's face had gone pale. This is a sifter chamber. A truth weaver. It reads verdant memory, Whrrrm said, and decides if you're carrying lies. Kaelin scoffed. That's stupid. Memory isn't truth. Exactly, Mira muttered. Whrrrm turned back to the pedestal. The chamber pulsed. A flower bloomed beside him, offering a single thorn. One must bleed. He looked at Mira, then at Kaelin, and took the thorn. He pressed it to his palm and let the blood fall onto the pedestal. The chamber brightened. Light flared from the 6 pods. They spoke in chorus. Truth, you do not want to become what you're becoming. But you know you will. And still, you walk forward. Whrrrm swallowed hard. Kaelin stepped back. Mira placed a hand on his arm. The chamber opened below them. It wasn't a room. It was a space beneath spaces. A hollow womb of living wood stretching in all directions. At its center, a pulse. A massive, dormant root core, thick as a tree trunk, glowing from within with slow, slumbering power. Around it glyphs. Old ancient. Pre-fracture. Mira whispered awed. The listening root. Kaelin stepped forward. We're not alone. They turned. A second root core pulsed in the far wall, faintly corrupted. Tainted with gray bark and sluggish sap. Kaelin opened her codex. This is what I came for. Mira drew her blade. You knew. Kaelin's voice was calm. I suspected. The hunt sent me to verify a rumor. That a seed core still existed unbound. If it's active, we can graft it to other groves. Reset broken ones. Mira hissed. You'd overwrite them. Kill the memory they already hold. Whrrrm stood between them. The Accord said this vault was sealed for a reason. Kaelin locked eyes with him. And now it's open. Whrrrm stepped toward the untainted root core. Placed his hand on it. His seed pulsed. And the core opened. Not with light. With memory. He fell inward. He stood in the center of a city of plants. Not ruins. Not echoes. Living. People moved across vine bridges and canopy paths. Verdant flow lit every structure. The city pulsed in harmony. And at its heart, a core just like this one. It spoke. Not in words, but in emotion. Grief, guilt, hope, and choice. You are not the first, but you may be the last. We remember all who carried us. Some saved, some broke, some planted their pain. Which will you do? Whrrrm opened his eyes. The chamber was still. The untainted core glowed softly. Kaelin watched him with something like fear. Mira held her breath. Whrrrm turned to them both. I'm not here to overwrite anything, he said. Not memories, not groves, not lives. He looked at the corrupted core. But I'll learn why this one broke. Kaelin nodded once. And said nothing. Whrrrm stood between 2 worlds. The vault's air was heavy, laced with old pollen and silent song. Behind him, the uncorrupted root core pulsed slowly, still open, still watching him. Before him, the corrupted core trembled with something deeper. Something broken. He stepped closer. The bark on the tainted core had cracked in long, uneven spirals. Its veins pulsed with sluggish black sap. Its glow wasn't light, it was heat. The kind that lingered after fire. Mira and Kaelin watched from behind. Neither spoke. He reached out and laid his hand against the surface. The moment his skin touched it, the world changed. He was pulled inward without warning. Not by force, by weight. Memory surged. Not his own. A city burned. Not like the cities Whrrrm had imagined from the old stories. Stone towers, smoke-filled streets. This was a grove city woven from root and vine, carved from songwood, perched among trees so wide they seemed to hold up the sky. But now it bled fire. Vines twisted in agony. Branches shattered. Verdant structures collapsed as green lightning struck the canopy in rhythmic pulses. At the center of it all, a single figure stood on a platform of living root, arms outstretched, body crowned with glowing leaves. A seed-bearer. Younger than Whrrrm. Pale. Silent. His seed was bright, so bright it hurt to look at. He was alone. Around him, root guards lay dead. Summons had been reduced to ash. The people of the city, hundreds of them, gathered below, crying out, begging, screaming his name. And above, a rift was opening. Massive. Ancient. The verdant collapse had begun here. Whrrrm watched, powerless, as the seed-bearer stepped forward. He placed both hands into a hollow in the platform. The wood screamed. The grove resisted. And the core responded. It opened not like a flower but like a mouth. A surge of power flowed upward, swallowing the city. The rift cracked. The city died. But the world held. One sacrifice. For many. The seed-bearer collapsed to his knees, vines growing from his eyes. His mouth opened. From it came a single phrase. I chose wrong. Whrrrm staggered as the memory spat him back into his body. His breath came in ragged bursts. Sweat poured down his face. His hands shook. The corrupted core had stilled. It no longer pulsed. Whatever memory it had left, it had shown him. He turned away slowly. Kaylin stood with her arms crossed, watching. Her face was unreadable, but her knuckles were white. Myra's eyes were different. She was crying. Not loudly. Just silently. Like someone who'd known what that memory would be before he touched it. Whrrrm sat on the stone floor, breath still uneven. He didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, Kaylin broke the silence. That was the second bloom. Whrrrm looked up. Kaylin continued. The seed-bearer who triggered it, his name was Ella. He made the call. Sacrificed the grove to close the rift. They say it worked. They say he saved a continent. But I've read the old records. He didn't save anyone. Just delayed everything. Mira turned on her. You don't get to judge him. Kaylin's tone didn't change. Someone has to. I was there. The words hit like bark breaking. Kaylin blinked. What? Mira looked down. Her voice was distant. Detached. My brother was Ella's second. I was 12. He was 15. We were both chosen for training. But I couldn't hear the root. I could fake the breathing, feel the patterns, but the seed never reached for me. It reached for him. Whrrrm didn't move. Mira continued. He bonded. I watched it happen. His veins glowed for days. They called him the next Grove Warden. But when the collapse reached us, it wasn't glory. It was terror. I saw what the power did to him. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. The verdancy grew through him. And when it came time to choose, he did. He made the right choice. Kaylin said nothing. Whrrm's voice was hoarse. I saw the moment. He didn't think it was right. No, Mira said quietly. He thought it was necessary. Silence filled the vault again. Then the root pulsed. Not the corrupted one. The listening root. A single blossom unfolded at its base. Inside, resting on a nest of greenlight moss, lay a seed. Not like Whrrm's. This one was pale. Almost white. And it shimmered with memory. He reached for it. The moment he touched it, he understood. This was the echo seed. A fragment of the listening root. A gift. It would allow him to return to past memories. Not dream visions. Full recall. He could relive what other seed-bearers had seen. Borrow their lessons. Their victories. Their regrets. But every use would bind more of them to him. Every use would blur the line between Whrrrm and the memory of what came before. He tucked it into his satchel without speaking. He didn't know if he would use it. But something told him he would. Eventually. They left the vault in silence. Kaylin walked behind now, her expression closed. Mira stayed beside Whrrrm, but neither of them spoke. The grove no longer felt like a place. It felt like a witness. Like it had seen everything they were, and was waiting to see what they would become. The surface was too quiet. When they emerged from the threshold route at dawn, the air didn't feel like Elder Thalo. It was thinner. Hollow. Like the trees were holding their breath. No birds called. No insects buzzed. Even the wind had gone still, as if unwilling to disturb whatever had changed. Whrrrm felt the difference before he saw it. The grove no longer pulsed in rhythm with him. Its roots still remembered him, but they were silent now. Watching. Waiting. Kaelin noticed it too. Her eyes scanned the tree line, hand never leaving her codex. Mira moved ahead, wordless, knife in hand. It wasn't until they reached the moss bridge at the edge of the grove that they saw what had happened. The trees beyond were gray. Not dead. Overwritten. A new grove had bloomed in their absence. But it wasn't natural. It wasn't old. It wasn't true. The trees had been reshaped, branches twisted unnaturally, roots curved into spirals of glassy bark, and leaves humming faintly with residual magic. At the center of the bloom, a verdant hunt glyph was burned into the stone. Kaelin went pale. "No," she muttered. "No, no, no." Mira grabbed her by the shoulder, spun her around. "You knew this would happen." "I didn't." "You let them track us," Mira snarled. "You opened the vault and left the path clear behind you." Whrrrm stood between them. "Stop." They did. But the air between them still burned. Kaelin looked away. "I didn't tell them. I swear." Myra's voice was sharp. Then they followed the glyph echoes. Verdant hunt can trace open flows if they know where to look. "You left a trail." Kaelin didn't deny it. Whrrrm stepped closer to the nearest tree. He pressed his hand to the bark. It was warm. Alive. But not with verdancy. It pulsed in perfect rhythm. Engineered rhythm. This grove hadn't grown, it had been installed. The seed in his chest recoiled. The sprout on his shoulder shuddered once. He turned back to them both. "This isn't just a takeover. This is artificial verdancy. This is stolen memory forced into growth." Mira said it flatly. "It's not a grove. It's a mold." Kaelin's voice came small. "This wasn't sanctioned." Whrrrm looked at her. "Then who did it?" Kaelin knelt beside one of the glowing roots. Pulled out a shard. Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't hunt work." "What?" "This glyph signature. It's not from my branch. It's not even local." She looked up, voice hardening. "This came from the root crafters." Whrrrm had heard the name once, briefly, in a passing grove vision. The root crafters were supposed to be extinct. Verdant scientists from the old world, banned even by the Bloomguard for warping flow into synthetic verdancy. They were the ones who tried to build their own seed bearers. Mira stared at the root shard. "They're supposed to be gone." Kaelin stood slowly. "They're not." They retreated to a ruined outpost along the outer ridge of Elder Hollow, one of Myra's old foraging routes. Vines covered the broken stone like a second skin, the roots gentle here, uncorrupted. Whrrrm sat beneath a collapsed arch and removed the echo seed from his satchel. It pulsed, faint and white, like bone remembering blood. He hadn't used it. Not yet. But the question pressed harder now. He could learn more, see more. Understand the root crafters, trace the engineered grove, prepare for what was coming. Or he could wait. Stay himself. Stay Whrrrm. Mira joined him at dusk. She sat silently beside him for a long time. Then softly. "He said it too." Whrrrm looked over. "My brother," she said. "Before the end. Before he used the core. He said the same thing Ella did. That he was choosing wrong." Whrrrm nodded. "I don't think there's a right choice," he said. "Just what you're willing to live with." Mira smiled faintly. "Or die for." Kaelin didn't sleep that night. She sat by the outpost fire, codex open, rereading the map of the vault. She wasn't writing. Just studying. Her hand drifted to the glyph shard again and again. Not to use it. To remember. She was scared. She just didn't know what she was more afraid of. The root crafters. Or the part of herself that agreed with them. That night, the grove sang again. Not with words. With memory. Whrrrm dreamed of roots coiling through stone. Of a man standing in a lab of living vines, watching children grow in pods of moss. Of symbols etched in green flame across a blackwood tablet. Of a phrase burned into a child's skin. Seed born, not seed bearer. He woke before dawn. He held the echo seed. And this time he didn't put it away. Whrrrm held the echo seed in his palm as the firelight flickered across its white surface. It was lighter than it should have been. Warm. Waiting. He sat alone in the ruins of the outpost, Mira and Kaelin asleep in different corners of the chamber, their breathing shallow with exhaustion and mistrust. The grove around them remained uneasy. Even here, outside the reach of the overwritten trees, the roots had gone still. Not dead, just listening. He whispered to the seed. "I need to see." It responded immediately. There was no wind. No sound. Only a single, slow pulse. And the world disappeared. He stood in a cavern of living architecture. Not memory. Not dream. An imprint. The lab was real, once. And now it lived inside the seed. Green light flickered along the walls, pouring from growth crystals embedded in bark steel panels. Verdant energy hummed through containment vines that held rows of glass pods shaped like blooming flowers. Each pod contained a child. They weren't asleep. They weren't awake. They were dreaming, suspended in controlled verdant flow, their bodies slowly being altered. Enhanced. No scars. No roots. Just perfect balance. Synthetic. A woman moved among them, her robes marked with the symbol Whrrrm had seen on the overwritten grove, the stylized spiral of the root crafters. She carried a staff of shaped vine glass, its tip pulsing with active memory script. Her face was kind. Too kind. She stopped before one of the pods and whispered gently. This one will hold. It's almost blooming. Whrrrm tried to move, to speak, but he wasn't there. Just a witness. A record. The woman turned suddenly. Looked through the memory as if feeling him there. Interesting, she said aloud. You're watching. Her voice carried an accent unlike any Whrrrm had heard before, clipped, precise, like moss over steel. Are you real? He tried to ask. She smiled. And vanished. He woke with a gasp. The echo seed had gone cold in his palm. The fire had died. Morning hadn't come. But something had changed. The seed in his chest was pulsing faster. It had seen something through him. And it wasn't happy. Kalen didn't speak when he told them. Mira did. You used it, she said quietly. Even after what we saw in the vault. Whrrrm nodded. I had to know. Did it speak? No, he said. But it saw me. One of them saw me. Kalen finally looked up. Root crafter? Yes. She exhaled. Then this is worse than I thought. Whrrrm stared at her. What aren't you saying? Kalen stood, pulled a wrapped crystal from her belt pouch and cracked it open. A faint projection glowed above it, verdant hunt glyphstream. A voice played, stern, cold, familiar. Unit 3, confirm vault status. If seed bearer is viable, extract or eliminate. If rootcrafter relics are confirmed, secure by any means. Authorization VAS code 6. Verdancy does not evolve. It obeys. Mira stepped forward. You knew they'd say this. Kalen didn't answer. You knew, she repeated, voice rising. Kalen's fists clenched. I didn't agree. But you didn't tell us. I didn't know if I could trust you. Whrrrm stepped between them again. Enough. They both fell silent. He turned to Kalen. Are you with them? She met his eyes. Her answer was slow. I was. They moved out before sunrise, following Myra's map north through fading rootlands. Their destination was a place she hadn't spoken of before. A grove marked only on the oldest Bloomguard maps. A grove that had severed its verdant connection during the collapse. Not destroyed. Not corrupted. Self-isolated. No seed. No core. No flow. And yet it had survived. They found it 2 days later, nestled between stone cliffs and shielded by a wall of thorned bramble. The trees were low but healthy. The grass vibrant. No glyphs. No sigils. No humming resonance. It was silent. Peaceful. Human. A boy greeted them at the gate, no older than 14. He wore no armor, no glyphs, only a woven cloak and sandals made of rootstrap. He stared at Whrrrm for a long moment, then said simply, You're late. The grove was called Hearthpine. It had no official records. No alliances. It had refused Bloomguard, verdant hunt, rootcrafter expansion, and rift-touched outcasts alike. They had kept their soil clean through discipline, ritual, and refusal. No seed had ever grown here. And yet they had not fallen. Whrrrm spoke with the elders. Mira explored in silence. Kalen stayed at the edge of the grove, muttering into her codex, rewriting her glyph log by hand. That night, an old woman approached Whrrrm beside the fire pit. She looked at the sprout on his shoulder. You're carrying weight not meant for one soul. He nodded. She placed a single wooden disc into his hand, carved with the image of a sleeping leaf. Use this only if you forget what you are. What is it? She smiled. A reminder. Not a cure. That night, Whrrrm dreamed again. Not a memory. Not a vision. A whisper. From the vault. From something beneath it. You saw the garden. You saw the bloom. Will you plant it again? He didn't answer. The seed pulsed. And the echo seed burned in his bag. Whrrrm didn't sleep for long. The grove of Hearthpine was too still. It wasn't silence, it was weight. Like something old had been buried here, and the land was holding its breath, not out of fear but in warning. The boy at the gate had said, "You're late." He hadn't asked who they were. He hadn't asked where they came from. He just known. Whrrrm sat beneath a tree near the outer wall, the wooden disc in his hand. It was simple, smooth, carved with a single leaf, the edges worn by time and use. The old woman's words echoed in his head. "Use this only if you forget what you are." The echo seed rested in his satchel beside it. Still cold. Still pulsing. A door waiting to be opened. Mira sat alone across the clearing, a piece of folded parchment in her hands. She hadn't spoken in hours. Her shoulders were tight. Her jaw clenched. Kaylin hadn't come back from her walk. Whrrrm knew what that meant. Kaylin stood at the edge of Hearthpine's outer tree line, glyphstone in one hand, codex in the other. She stared down at the last message she'd received. Unit 3, confirm seed core integrity. Record village. Burn grove if verdant strain present. Rejoin root watch at apex site. Do not engage local resistance. She read it twice. Then again. The words didn't change. But something inside her did. She didn't ignite the glyph. Instead, she tore the page from the codex, folded it once, and slipped it beneath the bark of a nearby tree. Then she burned her sigil. Not her orders. Her name. Mira didn't speak when Whrrrm approached. He sat beside her on the stone steps of the old grove hall. Her fingers trembled as she held the letter. He waited. When she spoke, her voice was paper-thin. "He left it here. My brother. Before the collapse." She unfolded the parchment. Passed it to him. The writing was jagged, hurried, but clear. "Mira, if this reaches you, then I did what I had to. I know what the core is asking me to do. I feel the roots calling every night. They want more than memory. They want decision. They want history made again. But we were never meant to hold all this. It's too much. Too loud. Too alive. If I fail, don't carry me. If I fall, don't follow. Plant something new instead." Whrrrm folded it gently. "He didn't want you to take the path. He didn't know I'd still be standing in the middle of it," she said softly. Then she stood and walked into the trees. Whrrrm didn't follow. Not yet. The next night it began. The fracture. It started small, just a whisper. Not from outside. From within. A memory that wasn't his. He sat near the river bend, hands covered in sap, staring at a wound in the bark of a dead tree. He didn't remember cutting it. He didn't remember standing. But his hands told the truth. And when he blinked, he wasn't in Hearthpine anymore. He stood on the edge of a cliff, high above a grove in flames. A man beside him, one of the old Bloom Guard, spoke in a language Whrrrm didn't recognize. But his body responded like he'd spoken it his whole life. His hands lifted. Verdant flow surged forward in a clean wave of binding vines. The fire parted. The grove lived. Whrrrm screamed. And woke. Mira found him 2 hours later, curled near the root wall, breathing ragged, his eyes unfocused. She touched his face. "Whrrrm." He looked up and for a moment wasn't sure who she was. Then the wooden disc rolled from his palm. She caught it. The moment she did, the seed calmed. The sprout stilled. Whrrrm exhaled. And remembered who he was. That night, Kaylin returned. But she was different. Her codex was gone. Her belt was bare. Her voice was steady. "I'm not with them anymore." Mira raised an eyebrow. "What changed?" Kaylin looked at Whrrrm. "I saw what they're building." She handed him a crystal, half-charged. Damaged. Inside it, a flickering projection stuttered to life. Not a message. A map. Beneath Hearthpine, buried under 15 meters of root and stone, was a machine. Circular. Massive. Alive. Verdancy twisted into architecture. Root forged into containment rings and memory conduits. It pulsed in slow rhythm. Not powered. Dreaming. Whrrrm stared at it. Kaylin's voice was low. "They didn't just make seed bearers. They made seed vaults." Mira stepped back. "They built them into the ground." Kaylin nodded. "We thought the root crafters died out. We were wrong. They went underground, literally. Some of them became grove systems. Spliced themselves into the roots. Into the memory fabric." Whrrm's stomach turned. "They're not just influencing the verdant system anymore," Kaylin said. "They are part of it." Mira closed her eyes. "That's why Hearthpine's so silent. It's not resisting verdancy. It's suppressing a seed underneath." Whrrm looked at the map again. "The machine's not active." Kaylin nodded. "Yet." They decided to stay 3 more nights. To plan. To decide. to listen. Renril visited the river bend again, this time with the wooden disc in one hand, the echo seed in the other. He didn't use either. But he sat for hours between them, trying to remember what was his and what had been left behind. He whispered to the tree beside him. Not yet. The tree didn't answer, but its leaves bent toward him in the wind. The ground beneath Hearthpine was shifting. Not visibly. Not violently. Just slowly. As though the roots beneath the village were drawing breath for the first time in centuries. Renril felt it first. A quiet murmur beneath his bones. Not verdant flow. Not seed whispers. This was mechanical. Rhythmical. Too precise to be natural. The seed in his chest responded with quiet tension, like it was backing away from something familiar it couldn't name. Mira confirmed it next. She crouched near the well at the village edge, her hand pressed to the ground, eyes narrowed. The soil's warming. Only a few degrees. But steady. Kaelin said nothing. She was watching the tree line. The wind had stopped blowing. The birds weren't singing. The entire forest was waiting. The entry point to the buried vault lay beneath the old granary, sealed behind 2 meters of false flooring and moss-veined insulation, hidden for generations by Hearthpine's elders. They had known. They just hadn't known what they were guarding. Mira led the descent. She moved with focus, but every step felt heavier the deeper they climbed. Wooden stairs turned to stone, then to root-reinforced earth, until the walls no longer resembled a grove at all. They reached the first lock after a quarter hour. A set of massive petals made of root-forged bark steel, sealed shut with verdant memory glyphs and pressure veins. It was not natural verdancy. It was grown, designed. Kaelin stepped forward, examining the lock with a distant look in her eyes. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, it's a threshold chamber. Biocoded. It'll only open for a seated signature. Mira hissed. Of course it will. Kaelin turned to Renril. It wants you. The moment he touched the glyph panel, the petals responded. A hum filled the air, low, resonant, ancient. Renril felt the echo seed flare inside his bag. Not with warning. With desire. The seal peeled open like a blooming scar. And the vault exhaled. It wasn't a single room. It was a complex. Carved into the ground beneath Hearthpine like a buried cathedral, 20 meters deep and still descending. Corridors twisted in root steel spirals, some pulsing with dormant power, others humming with faint artificial flow. Everything was quiet. But not dead. Kaelin scanned the walls, translating old glyphs. This was a backup seed facility, she said. Not a lab. Not a military outpost. A root renewal capsule. That means this was made to outlast a full collapse. Myra's voice was cold. Or start a new one. They moved deeper. 3 levels down, they found the first chamber still active. A circular room with 4 seed cradles, each shaped like a massive flower pod. One remained closed, faintly pulsing. The others were open, withered. Inside the closed cradle, a shape. Not a person. Not yet. Renril approached slowly, the glow from the pod reflecting off his skin. A humanoid form floated inside. Not breathing. Not dreaming. Suspended. Its chest bore a faint green symbol, the spiral of verdant flow, overlaid with the brand of the root crafters. Kaelin whispered, It's not fully grown. It's still sinking. Renril reached out. The sprout on his shoulder pulsed, hard. He staggered back. Mira caught him. Don't touch it. I didn't. I know. They stared at the thing in silence. Then Renril said quietly, It's seed-born. Mira nodded. And it's nearly awake. They had no time to argue. A motion glyph pulsed near the outer corridor. Someone was coming. Kaelin swore. That's not local resonance. They moved fast, back up toward the surface, but stopped short when voices echoed through the vault corridors. A search team. For maybe 5. Heavily armored. Verdant hunt echo units. Their steps were exact. Measured. Glyph calibrated for indoor soil resonance. Mira and Renril ducked into a side chamber. Kaelin did not. She stepped forward. Hands raised. And was met by a face she knew. He stepped out of the lead rank. Tall. Late 30s. Hair braided in hunt warrior fashion. His left arm entirely grafted with vinebone armor. His eyes sharp. Voice sharper. Kaelin Vire. Hunt Codex tier. Echo rank 2. Kaelin stood tall. Not anymore. His gaze didn't change. You've burned your badge. You've gone rogue. I found the truth. And the protocol, he replied, is elimination. Mira moved first. A root burst launched from her palm, cracking the corridor floor and hurling 2 soldiers into the wall. Renril followed, whip blooming from his wrist, two-pronged now, the chain bloom variant holding steady for the first time. Kaelin didn't move. She didn't need to. The moment the Echo rank raised his hand, she crushed a capsule at her belt. A spore cloud burst into the air, blinding and muting flow alignment for 6 seconds. That was all Mira needed. The team fell back. Not defeated, but disoriented. They retreated down the corridor, the lead agent locking eyes with Kaelin before disappearing into the mist. This isn't over. Back at the vault cradle, the seed-born pod was beginning to twitch. Its eyes didn't open, but its flow signature surged once. It had heard the fight, and it was sinking faster. Renril stared through the glass. I think it knows me. Kaelin looked pale. It might. Mira didn't blink. Then we kill it. Renril shook his head. It's not awake yet. It hasn't done anything. That's the point, she snapped. We stop it before it does. He hesitated. Looked at the echo seed in his bag. Felt the pull. Not just temptation. Meat. He could use it. Go back. Find the blueprint of this vault. Learn how to seal it. Learn how to stop it. Or lose another piece of himself. He looked to Mira. Then to Kaelin. And made his choice. Renril held the echo seed between his fingers for a long time before using it. He knelt beside the cradle room, just outside the dormant seedborn's reach. Kaelin stood watch at the corridor, sword drawn, her eyes darting toward every shadow. Mira had not returned since the fight. She hadn't said a word after Renril refused to destroy the pod. The vault hummed louder now. Not mechanically, emotionally. As if it was reacting to the proximity of choice. The echo seed pulsed once. Then again. And then the world shifted. The memory was unlike the others. This one knew he was coming. He stood in a chamber of green glass and living code, glyphs moving through the air like fish through water, twisting in a language older than the Bloomguard. At the center stood a man. Not cloaked in robes. Not armored. Simple tunic. Barefoot. Bark sleeves along his arms like grafted gloves. He was young but tired, eyes hollow from what they'd seen. And from what he was building. He turned the moment Renril arrived. You're later than I expected. Renril blinked. You know me? The man smiled. No. But I know the seed. And if it let you use the echo twice, it's because the vault has reached a threshold. He gestured to the room around them. This is where the root vaults were designed. Not built. That happened far below. But every system, every lock, every soul print was patterned here. Renril stepped forward. You made the one under Hearthpine. I made all of them. Pause. Call me architect if that helps. Renril swallowed. Why? The architect turned toward the center of the room, where a seed pod hung suspended in a cage of flow. Because the collapse wasn't going to stop on its own. The world was breaking. The rifts weren't closing fast enough. And the Bloomguard were too afraid to do what needed to be done. He touched the pod. I didn't make warriors, he said. I made continuity. Seedborn? He nodded. Grown to be stable, durable, and partially memory-linked. No trauma. No emotional corruption. Just verdancy in perfect rhythm. The ideal vessel. And what about their will? The architect turned. That's the part the seed was supposed to teach them. Renril felt a chill. But not all of them took root the way I designed. The memory warped suddenly. The chamber shook. A wall fell inward, roots bursting through like a wound. Smoke filled the space. Alarms that weren't made of sound began to wail. The architect turned to Renril, his voice suddenly harder. One of them opened too early. The memory strain fractured her. She thought she was me. She destroyed 2 labs before we sealed her in a containment grove. That was the first time I considered the possibility of failure. He stepped toward Renril. You're carrying it now. The seed. And something else. His eyes narrowed. The sprout. Renril stiffened. The architect shook his head. They were never supposed to do that. That's not verdancy. That's identity drift. Renril stepped back. Can I shut the vault down? The architect's face was unreadable. You can. If you're willing to trade something. What? The chamber fell away. Renril woke with blood on his lip, head pounding. The vault's power was now fully awake. The pod was twitching steadily. Kaelin stood over him, shaking his shoulder. What did you see? I saw the one who made this place. She nodded slowly. Can we stop it? I think so. Mira entered the chamber. Her eyes locked on the echo seed in his hand. She didn't shout. Didn't cry. Just said flatly, you used it again. He stood slowly. I had to know what it was. I told you what it was. It wasn't enough. She stared at him. Do you even hear yourself? He reached for her shoulder. She stepped back. You're losing yourself. I'm still me. For how long? Pause. Whrrrm lowered his hand. I'm trying to stop something worse. She stepped toward him. Then stop it without becoming part of it. Later that night, Whrrrm stood alone in the cradle room. The seed-born had begun to move. Not wake. Not rise. Just move. Subtle gestures. One hand twitching. A flicker behind its closed eyes. Was learning him. Adapting. He placed one hand on the glass and whispered, I'm not you. But part of him wasn't sure. Kaylin left the chamber after sundown. She walked beyond the vault entrance into the edge of the outer root system. And there he stood. Her old commander. The hunt agent who had once been her mentor. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't speak. He just looked at her. And then dropped a glyph capsule at her feet. Inside it, a message played. One day you'll understand. This isn't about control. It's about removing variables. Seed bearers. Seedborn. Memory echoes. All of it. The world doesn't need gardens. It needs fences. He walked away. Kaylin didn't follow. She picked up the capsule. And crushed it. In the lowest level of the vault, the dormant systems came online one by one. Pods blinked. Crystals pulsed. The glyph network began to reboot. And the seed-born opened its eyes. The pod opened without sound. No hiss of pressure, no blast of air. Just a slow unfurling of bark shell and memory-thick glass, petals peeling outward in a spiral pattern etched with glowing glyphs. Whrrrm stood alone in the cradle room, eyes locked on the thing he had refused to kill. The seed-born. It stood slowly, the liquid of incubation rolling off its skin in rivulets of pale green. Its chest rose once. Then again. Limbs moved in perfect rhythm. Not robotic. Not stiff. But too smooth. Too deliberate. Like every motion had already been practiced. Its eyes opened. Not glowing. Not hollow. Just green. A mirror of Whrrm's own. It looked at him. And spoke. Whrrm. He didn't move. You know me, he said. The seed-born tilted its head, curious. I know what came before you, it said. And what you were shaped from. Whrrm stiffened. I wasn't shaped. No, the seed-born replied. But you were patterned. It stepped down from the cradle. Each footfall triggered a faint pulse through the vault floor. The systems responded to it the same way they responded to Whrrm, without resistance. I've studied you, it said. Through the seed. Through the echo. I have your reflexes. Your earliest memory. Your pain. But not my will, Whrrm snapped. The seed-born blinked. That's what I'm here to understand. Kaylin heard the vault humming before she returned to the cradle chamber. She drew her blade but didn't raise it. The seed-born turned toward her when she entered. Examined her. Noted her insignia, half-torn hunt issue frayed with dirt. You're not one of them anymore, it said. Kaylin didn't answer. It nodded to itself. You burned the brand. You carry guilt now. Whrrm stepped between them. She's not yours to analyze. She's part of the pattern, the seed-born said softly. As are you. Stop saying that. Why? It asked. Truth isn't threat. Whrrm took a slow breath. What do you want? The seed-born's answer was simple. To learn what you are, so I know what I must become. Mira didn't return with Kaylin. She had left just after the pod cracked open, her expression unreadable. She didn't run. Didn't shout. She just turned and walked out of the vault, climbing the spiral corridor until the moss turned to stone and the stone turned to soil. Above ground, the sky was turning orange. Hearth pines stood quiet in the distance, the trees leaning gently toward the west. She sat beneath a branchless yew and listened. For a long time the grove said nothing. Then roots shifted beneath her. A small bloom opened beside her foot. One petal. One whisper. Stay. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in days, cried. Below, the conversation changed. Kaylin leaned against the wall, arms crossed, blade sheathed. Whrrm stood toe-to-toe with the seed-born now. It was mimicking his posture. You weren't made to replace me, Whrrm said. No, it agreed. I was made to endure you. Whrrm's jaw clenched. What does that mean? The seed-born stepped closer. You burned too fast. Seed-bearers always do. Emotion. Guilt. Purpose. It bleeds through the flow. Makes your choices too loud. Your roots too shallow. Whrrm shook his head. I'm not a function. I'm not here to be efficient. The seed-born tilted its head again. No. You're here to be remembered. The vault began humming louder. Somewhere below, a second cradle activated, responding to the seedborn's presence. Not another one waking. Just a system aligning. Kaelin drew her blade now. Tell it to stop. Whrrrm stepped forward. You don't get to make decisions down here. The seedborn nodded. I agree. It placed a hand over its chest. I'm only one root. A sprout of the deeper network. I'm not the danger. I'm the test. Kaelin blinked. Test for what? For what kind of world should grow next? Whrrrm pulled out the echo seed. The seedborn's eyes tracked it. You used it more than once, it said. I had to. Then you've already begun to change. I'm still me. Parts of you are. But parts of you now echo someone else. The longer you walk with memory not your own, the harder it is to hear your own voice. Whrrrm stared down at the seed in his palm. It felt heavier than before. Mira returned as the vault reached full ambient power. She entered without a word, the bloom still tucked behind her ear. The seedborn turned to her. You're older than the others, it said. She didn't flinch. You carry something broken. She drew her blade. If you call him broken, I'll cut you in half. The seedborn smiled faintly. I meant you. Kaelin stepped between them now. This ends here, she said. Does it? The seedborn asked. You are not part of the accord, she said, voice sharp. You are not verdant-bound. You are artificial life. A rootcrafter memory. And you are not permitted to walk the surface. Then kill me, it said softly. Kaelin didn't move. Whrrrm whispered, don't. Kaelin's voice was trembling. Then decide, seed-bearer. Whrrrm turned back to the seedborn. You said you weren't the danger. I'm not. Then what is? The seedborn's eyes lost focus. For a long moment it stood still, too still. Then it said, I woke early. Because something else is waking earlier. Kaelin stepped back. What? I wasn't made alone, the seedborn whispered. And the one buried deeper, remembers everything. The vault shuddered. Not from activation. From pressure. From something rising. The seedborn turned to Whrrrm. I will not stop you. Whrrm's heart pounded. But if you fail, I will finish what you couldn't. The air in the vault had changed. It wasn't just warmer, it was wider, like the walls no longer held the same boundaries. Like the structure had become aware of itself, and had started breathing again after centuries of stillness. Whrrrm felt it in the rhythm of the soil. The way the floor pressed gently back beneath his steps, as if the entire complex were woven into a living root brain, and he was now walking through thought. He stood alone in the upper corridor where the memory halls had once been sealed. Now the petals were open. And every step he took whispered names that weren't his. He shook them off. But one still lingered. Ella. Mira found him standing there. So silent. You're bleeding again, she said softly. He touched the corner of his mouth. Sap, not blood. Gold green, slow and thick. I'm fine. No, you're not. He turned. She looked tired. Not angry. Just disappointed. The seedborn was right, she said. It's changing you. I know. She took a step closer. You have one echo seed left. He nodded. I won't use it without telling you. She shook her head. That's not enough anymore. He blinked. Myra's voice was tight. You choose. No. Either you destroy it or you use it once more, with me watching. But after that it's over. We burn it. And we never speak to ghosts again. Whrrrm hesitated. You need to stay human, she interrupted. That's the only way this matters. Kaelin stood further down the corridor, fingers tapping against her belt pouch, where she now kept her own emergency signal crystals, half of which she'd already shattered just to block hunt tracking attempts. The rest were nearly depleted. But one was still intact. A hunt splinter team from her old circle. Echo Sigil 4 not aligned with Central Command. Scouts. Runners. Survivors. She cracked the glyph with a tremor in her hand. It activated immediately. Kaelin Vire. X-Unit 3. Standing in Verdant Vault A05. Confirm Echo Breach. Request delay in elimination order. No seedborn threat at this time. Standing by with seed bearer for neutral resolution. Silence. Then. Delay approved. But not permanent. Seed bearer must be assessed. We will arrive in 4 days. Kaelin breathed. Then said, understood. And began preparing a message to Mira and Whrrrm. Below them, the lower chambers of the vault began to hum again. The first seedborn, still neutral, still silent, walked the corridors like a ghost. It made no demands. It spoke to no one. It simply listened. But when it passed the sealed subcradle deeper in the root chamber, its eyes narrowed. It placed one hand on the door. Whispered, "You are not ready." Something inside shifted. Not awake, but dreaming. That night, Mira sat with Whrrrm near the old bloom chamber. They didn't speak. She passed him a cloth. He wiped the sap from his mouth. She handed him the echo seed. He held it. It pulsed once. He didn't want to use it. But part of him knew. This was the only way to find the true shutdown sequence the architect had built in. A way to prevent the second seed born from reaching full awareness. He looked to Mira. She didn't smile. But she nodded. "I'm here." He used it. The memory took him deeper than the others. Not into a chamber. Into a vision of collapse. The architect again, but this time older, speaking not to Whrrrm but to himself, carving glyphs into a root core in the middle of a crumbling lab. The world above was breaking. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. He was dying. "I built too much," he said aloud. "I thought I was preserving a world that would understand. But no one remembers the cost." He pressed his palm to the core. "This code ends them," he whispered. "If someone comes after me, if they find the vaults, this is how they choose who blooms." He turned and in that moment saw Whrrrm. Not physically, but through time. Through the seed. "You're not me," the architect whispered. "But you carry me." He lifted a small seed. Carved with an inverted spiral. "This is the key. The final gate." Whrrrm reached for it. And was torn back. He collapsed in Myra's arms, body cold, eyes wide. She held him. He whispered, "I saw it. The code. I know how to stop the second one." Mira closed her eyes. "Then we destroy the seed." He nodded. And opened his hand. The echo seed was already turning to ash. Far to the west, beyond Elder Hollow in the Deadwood Flats, a figure stepped from the root hollow of a fallen world tree. He was wrapped in silence. His cloak woven from blackroot. No seed in his chest. But vines in his veins. He looked east. And smiled. "Found you." The vault had never felt so alive. It wasn't the hum of the petals. Not the echo of systems flickering back to power. It was deeper now. Beneath the floor. Beneath the air. The soil itself trembled in rhythm with the second seedborn's heartbeat. And Whrrrm could feel it even when standing still. The shutdown glyphs the architect had embedded into his memory weren't simple commands. They were layered, each one bound to a sequence of breath and thought, requiring not only precise verdant flow but emotional clarity. Each code pulse asked a question. "Do you believe in endings?" Whrrm's answer came without words. He pressed his palm to the glyph stone in the lower cradle chamber. His sprout tensed. The roots coiled at his feet like breathless vines. The vault resisted. Not with force. With history. Memory bled through the walls like sap through cracked bark. Visions of the vault's creation. Of seedborn failures. Of root chambers flooded with echo fluid. Screams layered beneath lullabies. Still he pushed. Mira sat outside the cradle chamber, her hand on the floor, eyes closed. She wasn't praying. She was listening. And the flow responded. Not the surface rhythm she'd learned in Bloomguard training. This was older. Wilder. And it surged now through her like a river cracking a dam. The sprout she'd always feared, quiet, coiled in her chest since her brother's death, bloomed. Not fully. But enough. Vines split from her wrist without her summoning them. Her blade hummed against the moss. And the wall beside her sang, a faint melody of root resonance. She opened her eyes. Whispered, "Oh no." Kalen's warning system flared 1 hour before sunset. Not a threat. An arrival. The neutral hunt splinter was approaching. 4 individuals moving in a careful diamond pattern through the western root arch, their footprints following old Bloomguard travel techniques. Kalen waited near the outer tunnel. She recognized 2 of the glyph signatures. But the third. A shiver ran up her spine. It was too clean. Too precise. She stepped into view. Raised a flare. They approached slowly. The hunt leader, Whale, bowed his head slightly. "Kalen, you're still alive." She didn't return the gesture. "You got my message?" He nodded. Echo confirmation yes. Seed bearer active. Vault unsealed. Neutral resolution requested. She watched his hand. It twitched twice. Subtle code. Caution. Someone was listening. Back in the vault, Whrrrm reached the final glyph ring. It pulsed faint white, carved into the stone like a living scar. Around it, the chamber had begun to shift. Roots peeled back from the walls. The air thickened. And at the edge of hearing, a voice. Not his. Not the seedborns. But familiar. Ella. You can end it. But the ending is not quiet. It's not peace. It's weight. Can you carry it? Whrrrm gritted his teeth, pressed his palm to the final stone, and spoke the last phrase. The vault answered. It did not close. It groaned. Somewhere below, the second seedborn woke. The cradle lock burst open 3 floors down. Not gently. Not like the first one. This was a surge, roots exploding outward like torn muscles, flower pods screaming open in a blast of biopressure and light. The chamber flooded with light. The figure that rose was not human. Tall. Root woven. Its bark was patterned with both Bloomguard and Rootcrafter symbols, but its eyes were black. Not empty. Overflowing. With too much. Too many voices. Too many memories. The second seedborn stepped forward, and the vault shifted around it. Whrrrm staggered. Something's wrong. The first seedborn appeared in the upper chamber, eyes narrowed. It looked to Whrrrm. Then down. It has no center. Mira burst into the chamber, eyes glowing faintly with verdant light. What happened? I tried to shut it down. But something else. The vault shook again. Kalen's voice crackled through the glyph line. We have company. 3 hunt operatives are clean. One's tagged with Rootcrafter residue. I'm blocking the corridor, but they're moving fast. Mira drew her blade. Whrrrm grabbed his whip. The second seedborn moved into the lower stairwell. Its voice when it came was not a voice. A choir. We remember more than the vault. We remember the pattern before the seed. You are a branch of a failed tree. It raised its hand. The root chamber cracked. Far to the east, near the edge of Elder Hollow, the man in the root-black cloak knelt beside a fallen stump. He placed one hand against the bark, closed his eyes, and tapped into the verdant resonance. He heard Whrrm's name. He smiled, and whispered, I see you now. Behind him, 3 deer turned to watch. Their eyes glowed green, and they bowed. The vault wasn't just vibrating anymore. It was breathing. The walls exhaled spores in irregular pulses. Root lines shifted underfoot like nerves. The memory systems, once dormant, now flickered with half-shapes, glimpses of faces from other times, other lives. They blurred across the walls like ghosts trapped behind bark glass. Whrrrm stood in the upper hall, clutching the final glyph stone. It hadn't sealed the system, it had triggered a fallback routine. The architect's failsafe hadn't been a lock. It had been a test. Below, the second seedborn moved through the vault chambers like it already knew the way. It wasn't aggressive. Not yet. But every step it took caused the architecture to twist slightly, hallways warping, symbols reshaping themselves in strange spirals. And its voice. Not shouting. Not angry. Just wrong. We are the sum. We are the after. This vault was not meant to contain us. You were not meant to survive us. Mira stepped between Whrrrm and the staircase. Her eyes glowed. Not dimly. Not dangerously. But with focus. She raised one hand. The vines obeyed. They didn't twist from her fingers or lash wildly. They wove into armor, crisscrossing her forearm with bark thread, thorns curling inward into reinforcement. Whrrrm turned to her, stunned. I thought. She didn't look away from the stairwell. So did I. He lowered his voice. Your brother said your flow was unstable. It wasn't, she said softly. He just knew what it would make me become. The second seedborn stepped into view. Its form shimmered faintly, multiple images overlaid like a broken lens. Mira stepped forward. I'm not afraid of memory, she said. The seedborn tilted its head. You will be. When it forgets who you are. Kalen didn't wait for the hunt splinter to fire first. She struck the Rootcrafter-marked operative with a pulse blade cut across the shoulder. The man didn't cry out. Didn't bleed. Instead his armor split, and roots spilled out. Not armor. Grown barkskin. He hissed a single command in verdant cipher. The 2 hunt scouts near him froze, just for a second, but it was enough. Kalen knocked one off his feet and rolled beneath a vine spear that embedded itself in the corridor wall. The Rootcrafter agent turned toward her, eyes glazed with green shimmer. You shouldn't have run. Kalen raised her blade. You shouldn't have followed. They clashed in the outer passage, the walls vibrating with every blow. The vault was rejecting them both, pulse shifting the stone beneath their feet, disrupting balance. But Kalen was fighting for the first time as herself. No more code. No more allegiance. Only what she believed. In the vault's heart chamber, Whrrrm and Mira reached the node core. The second seedborn stood before it, vines trailing from its arms, touching the system like strings on an instrument. Whrrrm stepped forward. This ends now. The seed-born didn't turn. Why end what has not begun? Whrrrm raised his whip. You don't belong here. Neither do you. You carry memories you did not earn. You echo steps you never took. You are not Whrrrm. You are the soil he rests in. Mira launched her vines first, binding roots around the seed-born's limbs. It didn't struggle. It simply looked at her. Ah, the sister. She froze. Whrrrm snapped his whip forward, the chain bloom variant striking with perfect aim, cracking the floor beneath the seed-born and dragging it back. The seed-born stumbled. Its eyes flickered. And it spoke one voice alone. Girls. Please. I don't want to be like them. Whrrrm hesitated. Just long enough. The seed-born's form split. Its right arm bloomed into a blade of bark light, sweeping upward. Mira blocked it. Not with steel. With her bare hand. Verdant armor burst into bloom across her body, her flow reaching full shape at last. Not wild. Not corrupted. Just true. She countered. And the vault screamed. Kalen disarmed the rootcrafter operative just as the glyphrate network cracked. Light pouring through the walls in a fracture pattern that snaked from the vault's base all the way to the soil above. The rootcrafter hissed, stumbled, tried to activate his codex implant. Too slow. Kalen ended it. No words. Just silence. The neutral hunt scout who had survived watched her. And didn't report it. Myra's vines held the seed born to the wall, her blade humming in her other hand. It didn't resist. It looked at Whrrrm. And said softly. I didn't want to wake up like this. Whrrrm stepped closer. He lowered his whip. I know. She reached for his hand. But just before contact, her form shimmered. Not physically. Existentially. And vanished. A return to seed. To soil. To silence. The vault stopped shaking. The petals closed. The breath stilled. The memory quieted. Outside in the grove above, the trees straightened again. The birds returned. The moss glowed faintly with morning dew. And in the distance, beneath a dead world tree, the root-black-cloaked man sat in meditation. He opened his eyes. And smiled. 2 are gone. 1 remains. He stood. And began walking east. They left the vault at dawn. The petals had closed. The lower levels were sealed. The memory chambers no longer pulsed. But the ground hadn't stopped humming. Even as they walked through the upper root corridors toward the exit, Whrrrm could feel the rhythm in the soil. Fainter than before. Not hostile. Just echoing. Not from the vault. From within him. 2 pulses now. 1 fast. His own. 1 slow. Fading. The seed-born girl. Her memory hadn't vanished with her. She had left something behind. Not a presence. Not a whisper. Just a beat. Mira was the first to step into daylight. The moment her boots touched soil, the flow surged again through her arms. Her spine straightened. The sprout in her chest curled tight beneath her collarbone. But it didn't spike. It didn't lash. It simply waited. Kalen stepped beside her, mud across one shoulder, cloak torn, sword unstrapped. You're holding it back, she said. Mira nodded. Barely. Whrrrm emerged next. The grove of hearth pine lay quiet beyond the rise. No smoke. No song. But the leaves had opened again. The village children were playing at the edge of the grass fields, unaware of what slept below them. They deserve more, he said. Kalen looked at him. Then give them more. They stayed 2 nights to recover. Mira meditated near the river. Kalen rewired her calm glyph. Whrrrm sat at the edge of the grove each evening and listened. On the 3rd morning, the hunt scout, Terran, approached their fire. He didn't speak at first. He simply knelt and placed his codex crystal in front of them. I'm not going back. Kalen stared at him. I watched everything, he said. I heard the seed born. I saw the corruption. He looked to Whrrrm. I thought you were the problem. Whrrrm didn't speak. I was wrong. Terran stood. I don't have a code left to follow. But I'll follow you. Until you don't need me anymore. Later that day, Kalen gave Whrrrm a scroll. Found it in the rootcrafter's pack, she said. Not standard hunt archive. This one's older. Whrrrm unrolled it. It was a map. Hand-drawn. Verdant ink. Glyph-dotted routes. And at its center, circled in red. Grove of the 1,000 Names. Mira inhaled softly. I thought it was legend. Kalen shook her head. It's real. This map predates the Bloomguard collapse. Terran added, if the rootcrafters were trying to hijack the seed, they were probably drawing from whatever is buried there. Whrrrm folded the map carefully. We go there. They left Hearthpine the next morning. No speeches. Just silence and soil beneath their boots. Each step took them further from the vault. And closer to something older. Far to the west, in the grove of thorns, the man in the root-black cloak stood atop the central shrine. The trees around him had bent low, not broken but submitted. He spoke once. And the grove answered. The first seed was not a gift. Was a chain. We will teach it to grow differently. 3 grove keepers knelt. Their eyes glowed faint green. But their blood was black with verdant reversal. He turned to the east. Whrrrm walks toward memory. He smiled. I will greet him in silence. That night, as Whrrrm and the others camped near the river between groves, Mira sat beside him, her hands still. She said nothing for a long time. Then softly. Your seed has 2 rhythms now. I know. Is it you? I think so. Will it stay that way? Whrrrm looked at the stars above the sleeping canopy. I don't know. She reached over. Took his hand. We'll find out. The trees grew quieter the farther they walked east. Not lifeless. Not dead. But still. As if the land were holding its breath, not out of fear, but out of memory. Whrrrm moved at the front now, map in hand, following the faded verdant trails carved through moss and time. The grove of the 1,000 names was still distant, but halfway there stood the last known Bloomguard outpost, an archive fort named Ilaren's Hollow. Its name had been scratched off half the maps. The rest just called it the Echoed Gate. They reached it by dusk. It wasn't a ruin. Not entirely. The outer walls still stood, choked in ivy and wrapped in vines so tightly the stone groaned with weight. Old glyph lanterns sat dormant on overgrown poles. The gate was cracked inward, half buried in moss. No wind passed through the halls. Just stillness. Taran whistled low. It's like someone erased the sound. Kaelin knelt near the gate, fingers brushing old verdant script. These were once resonance anchors, she said. This place was built to store memory, amplify it. Mira frowned. So where is it? Whrrrm stepped forward. The seed in his chest pulsed once. Then again. Not strong. But steady. Still here, he whispered. Just quiet. Inside, the archive was layered like a honeycomb, spiral corridors descending into the stone, with root glass shelves now shattered and dust-choked. They moved cautiously. No signs of occupation. No lights. No rot. Just empty shelves. Missing pieces. As if someone had come through and taken only what mattered. Taran touched the wall glyphs. No traps. But something's been here since the collapse. Kaelin added, recently. Mira said nothing. She was staring at a sealed bloom chamber in the wall, closed tight but pulsing faintly. Not verdant. Older. She pressed her hand against it. It opened. Inside was not a memory pod. Not a relic. But a root tether, a strand of living verdancy not shaped by glyph or core. It moved like a vein. Mira stepped back. I felt this before. Kaelin tilted her head. In the vault. Mira shook her head. In me. Whrrrm stepped closer. The tether twisted slightly, responding to Mira alone. You're not seed-born, he said. No, she whispered. I'm not even sure I'm seed-bound. She looked at them both. What if my flow didn't come from the seed at all? Whrrrm descended to the second tier of the archive while they spoke. It was darker here. Colder. But the seed in his chest pulled him gently forward. Not urgent. Not invasive. Just familiar. He turned a corner and stopped. There, in the center of a collapsed chamber, stood a glyph mirror, shattered but still humming. And in its reflection. Not himself. Not the present. A Bloomguard warrior, whip in hand, sap bleeding from one eye. His armor was etched with Whrrm's name. Whrrm froze. The mirror trembled. And then the figure looked up. Right at him. Above, Mira placed her hand back on the root tether. A pulse of green light surged up her arm, through her chest and out through her eyes. She didn't scream. But her breath caught. And a voice spoke from her own mouth. The Bloomguard didn't begin the seed. They found it. And what they found had already grown through others. Kaelin stepped back. Mira collapsed. Whrrm didn't blink. The man in the mirror, his not-self, raised his whip slowly, then pressed a finger to his own chest. Where the seed would be. Then he mouthed something. Whrrm couldn't hear it. But he understood. You are not the first Whrrm. Then the mirror shattered. That night they didn't speak. Not about the mirror. Not about the root tether. Kaelin took the first watch. Taran studied the map again. Mira sat alone, eyes closed, her hands no longer shaking. She had seen what she feared. And it had spoken in her voice. Renrol lay beneath the overgrown arch, eyes open. The second pulse in his chest now beat at the same rhythm as the one in the mirror, and he wondered, if memory could remember him, what else had been watching? Far behind them, in a grove that had long since rejected the seed, the man in the root-black cloak entered an abandoned spire. He placed his hand against the wall, and spoke one word. Renrol. The bark trembled, and roots answered in kind. The forest changed subtly as they left the ruins of Alaren's hollow behind. The trees were taller here. Not just older but stranger, as though something had helped them grow not with time but through it. Some bent at impossible angles, forming archways that looked carved by intention, not nature. Others pulsed faintly beneath their bark as though sap was moving too fast inside. A few bore leaves that shimmered silver under daylight, then shifted to deep violet by dusk. Mira noticed it first. The flow's wrong, she murmured, brushing her fingers against a trunk. Renrol paused. The sprout on his shoulder quivered. His seed pulsed once, slow and low. Not a warning. A query. Kalen checked the map. This is the Vale of Crossing Boughs. It wasn't supposed to be this warped. The last Bloomguard patrol marked this grove as dormant. Terran, walking behind them, scanned the horizon. Maybe it woke up. Or something woke it. They continued on, slower now. Halfway into the grove, they found the divide. It wasn't a border you could walk over. It was a line in the air. One side of the grove was lush, wild, thick with uncontrolled verdancy, flowers blooming in the sky, roots running along branches instead of the ground. The other side was pale, dry, colorless. Dead. And yet, that side still pulsed. Renrol stepped forward. His seed pulsed once. Then again. The sprout on his shoulder twisted slightly, as if unsure which direction to lean. Mira stood beside him. This place has two timelines. Two flows. Kalen narrowed her eyes. One refused verdancy. The other took too much. Terran dropped to one knee. These aren't natural divisions. Someone did this. A hum rose through the soil. Mira stepped to the left into the wild side. The vines responded to her without touch. They curled upward, sensing her flow. Not in hostility. In recognition. Renrol stepped to the right. The air grew colder. His breath fogged. But his seed pulsed harder here. Echoing. It remembers something, he whispered. Kalen approached. This grove was split on purpose. To study outcomes. Two halves of the same origin. Terran added, rootcrafter design? Kalen didn't answer immediately. Then. No. Older. They stood at the center. Between two flows. Two timelines. Two fates. And the forest watched. Renrol stepped deeper into the cold side. The moment he crossed the invisible boundary, the wind stilled. The noise of insects faded. Even the sound of his own footsteps dimmed. His seed pulsed again, stronger now. Not pain. Not warning. Just urgency. Then the echo started. It wasn't a sound. It was a pulse of memory that rattled through his spine. A rhythm that wasn't his own. For a moment he couldn't feel his breath. He was standing, but he was also somewhere else. He blinked. And the world shifted. He stood in the same grove, but it was whole. Untouched. The sky above glowed silver blue, and the trees sang with wind-touched leaves. A figure stood ahead of him, wrapped in long robes of bark cloth and moss thread. They turned. She looked like Mira. But older. Her eyes weren't just green, they glowed faintly from within. Renrol, she said. Not surprised. Not curious. Just acknowledging. I'm not, he began. She raised a hand. You're not him yet. Pause. You're carrying a name that isn't yours. The vision cracked. Myra's voice pulled him back. Renrol. He gasped, falling to one knee. The cold air returned. The forest's light dimmed. Kalen helped him up. What did you see? I think, someone who knew me. But from before. Before what? He didn't answer. Because even he didn't know. Elsewhere in the split grove, Mira traced the wild side's flowering roots. They moved with her. Not beneath her, with her. Following her presence like birds circling a warm draft. She paused at a bloom the size of a small basin. Inside it, a swirl of root threads shimmered. Not natural. Designed. When she reached into it, it sang. A single note, pure and high. It echoed into her bones. She staggered. Then the flower closed gently around her hand, not in entrapment, but in recognition. Her flow flared. Not wildly. Not with chaos. But with clarity. The vine spoke. You are not chosen. You are grown. Her breath caught. She pulled her hand free. Kaelin watched from a distance. Eyes narrowed. One hand on her blade. Taryn stood between the timelines. And the forest still watched. Waiting. For what? Even the soil refused to answer. Kaelin froze mid-step as her wrist crystal pulsed. A faint glyph pattern, nearly invisible, flickered through the light of her vision band. Encrypted. But familiar. She tapped her wrist and opened the signal. Taryn saw the motion and moved beside her. Who is it? Kaelin's expression darkened. Hunt comms relay. This isn't just a scan, it's a trace. Mira turned toward them. Someone found us? Kaelin shook her head slowly. They're not broadcasting openly. They're whispering through the old verdant pulses. Experimental tracking. Someone high rank. Whrrrm stepped from the shadow of the cold side, the echo still rattling through him. What do they want? Kaelin read the code again. Then paled. They're not looking for me. She turned to Whrrrm. They're asking where to deliver you. That night the forest didn't sleep. The wild side rustled with dreams. The dead side sat still as bone. And in his rest, Whrrrm turned beneath his cloak and whispered a name. Not one he remembered, but one that burned. Valen. He woke with tears on his face. And the seed inside him pulsing like it had just remembered its own beginning. Whrrrm sat at the edge of the campfire just before dawn, hands folded tight around a canteen he hadn't touched. The name still rang through his mind. Valen. He hadn't spoken it before. Not once. Not in thought, not in dream. And yet, the moment it passed his lips in sleep, it had felt like returning. He stared into the embers. The others hadn't stirred yet. Mira had fallen into uneasy sleep after another flow pulse knocked the breath from her lungs. Taryn stood watch at the perimeter, tracing quiet glyphs into the dirt with the toe of his boot. Kaelin sat just out of view, calm crystal pressed to her ear in silent scan mode. Whrrrm reached for the sprout on his shoulder. It curled gently under his touch, but this time, only this time, he could feel something else in it. A thread. Not part of him. Running alongside. Mira awoke with her eyes already glowing. Her breath came shallow and fast. She rolled to her side and forced herself to breathe in sync with the grove around her. Vines at the camp's edge responded in kind, tightening and loosening in rhythm with her breath. She had not told Whrrrm the rest. The flower hadn't just spoken. It had shown her something. A network. A place in the verdancy that did not exist in Bloomguard records. A pocket of flow that was not tied to any grove. A place that only responded to one voice. Valen's. Kaelin's scan finished silently. The code returned as static, then slowly reassembled into readable glyph fragments. Not central hunt protocol. But signal mesh. A braided comm thread designed to trail behind verdant pulses. She whispered, "They're listening through the roots now." Taryn turned. "Who's they?" Kaelin tapped the rune crystal and showed him. The symbols rearranged slowly, blooming into shape like a moss map. Deliver Valen // echo key ready // core unstable / convergence initiated. Taryn exhaled sharply. They're not tracking you. They're inviting him. Kaelin nodded. And they think he already said yes. The grove reacted with the sunrise. The wild side bloomed open, revealing a trail of flowers Whrrrm hadn't seen the night before. They curled into a spiral, each petal a different shade, mimicking the older grove languages that predated spoken verdancy. He stood and followed it, not because he wanted to, but because the rhythm in his chest, the second pulse, already knew where it ended. The spiral led him deeper than the map had drawn. Roots arched overhead in perfect symmetry, growing tighter and more uniform until the trail narrowed into a low corridor of woven greenlight bark and braided vine. Whrrrm walked without speaking. Every few steps he could feel the ground shift, subtly sinking with his pace. The tunnel ended at a clearing. A chamber. Open sky above, yet the light that filtered in came soft and diffused, like it had passed through memory first. In the center stood a formation shaped like a seed split in two, one side pulsing faintly with life, the other cracked and hollow. Whrrrm stepped forward. The chamber pulsed. Not a sound but a sensation. The stone beneath him beat like a slowed heart. Mira appeared behind him. She hadn't spoken the whole way, but now her voice came clear and low. "It's not a grove core." Whrrrm nodded. "No. It's older." He placed his hand on the pulsing side. A tremor ran up his arm. The sprout on his shoulder flared wide, leafing into full bloom. And the chamber spoke. "Valen, you are not late." He staggered. Mira caught him. Her voice was shaking. "It said your name." "I didn't tell it." "You didn't need to." The cracked half of the structure began to glow faintly. Kaelin and Taran arrived just in time to see Whrrrm collapse to his knees. He looked up at them, his eyes wide. "I've been here before." Kaelin stepped forward. "When?" He swallowed. "I don't remember." He touched the stone again, and it opened like a gate. The gate didn't open outward, it opened inward. Whrrrm stepped into the chamber and the world folded around him. Light bent. Sound fell away. The rhythm in his chest aligned with something larger, something deeper. The air grew warmer, denser, like the breath of an ancient being filling a hollow space. He blinked, and the future poured through him. He stood in a garden that shouldn't exist. Tall canopy trees arched overhead in repeating spirals. Crystals embedded in stone gave off a low hum, not of energy, but of presence. A dozen figures moved beneath the roots. Not humans, not seed-born. Something between. They wore armor grown directly from their skin. Their eyes shimmered with the glow of full verdant resonance. One of them turned. "Valen," she said. Whrrrm opened his mouth to speak, but he was no longer speaking as Whrrrm. His voice answered, quiet and certain. "I said I would return." Outside the chamber, Mira stood frozen. The flow from the cracked stone arced toward her, but did not touch her. It formed a circle around the gate. A boundary. A seal. "He's inside a memory that didn't happen," she whispered. Kaelin approached, watching the light twist. "A future that never came." Taran knelt near the outer ring. "Can we pull him back?" Mira didn't answer. She had already heard the chamber speak again. "Only Valen may choose." Beneath Whrrm's hands the garden shifted. The figures walked closer. They knelt. "Verdancy failed," one said. "But you held the line." Valen stood tall. "No," he said. "I planted something better." He turned toward the gate, toward Mira, toward Whrrm. And the vision split. He saw both versions of himself. And he spoke. "I remember now." Then darkness. Then breath. Then silence. Whrrm woke on his back in the grass. Morning light filtered through the canopy, soft and golden. The pulse in his chest, his seed, was quiet. Not gone. Not dormant. Just waiting. His head throbbed with more than pain. It throbbed with memory. Not a vision. A life. He blinked hard, forcing the sensation down. The scent of moss and mineral filled his lungs. Nearby he heard a slow breath. "Mira." "Whrrm?" He turned. She knelt beside him, her hand hovering just above his chest. "Say something," she said quietly. He swallowed, voice hoarse. "I remember a city made of rootstone. I remember a council with no names. I remember my voice echoing without sound." Mira's throat tightened. "Did they call you Valen?" He nodded. Taran and Kaelin stood nearby, watching in silence. The spiral chamber behind them had closed. No gate. No light. No sound. Only earth. Kaelin stepped forward. "Do you remember how you got there?" Whrrm sat up slowly. "No. But I remember that I belonged." Mira shifted. "You were him. I was going to be him." That afternoon they moved slowly from the chamber site. The grove no longer pulsed as it had the day before. The flower trail that had led Whrrm to the gate had withered overnight. Where the petals had been, faint lines of burned verdancy trailed into the dirt, like veins that had collapsed inward. Kaelin knelt beside one. She touched the edge with a gloved finger. Residual echo. Still alive, but only barely. Mira asked, "Did we kill it?" Kaelin shook her head. "We woke something older. And it doesn't bloom like the rest." Taran added, "The name is still in the system." I checked. "Valen is now embedded in the surrounding root line like a stored command." Mira looked at Whrrm. "It's not just your name anymore." Whrrm nodded slowly. "It's a direction." Later that night, Whrrm sat apart from the others. He traced a circle into the dirt. Then a spiral. Then another name. Not Valen. Not Whrrm. Something else. A name he hadn't heard spoken, but now could not forget. Valen. He whispered it. And the soil responded. Not in sound. In breath. At dawn, Kaelin's wrist crystal pulsed. The glyph code was old, antique even by Bloomguard standards, but it hadn't decayed. The signal shimmered in clear vertical alignment, each character unfolding like petals blooming in midair. Valen has walked. Prepare the gate. Kaelin froze. Taran leaned in. What gate? Kaelin's voice was quiet. I don't know. But I've seen this phrase before. Years ago. Burned into the edge of a classified scroll. A rootfold mission file. It was sealed with blacklight wax. Mira approached. You're saying this message was written before any of us were born? Kaelin nodded. The phrase wasn't a warning. It was a prophecy. Mira pulled Whrrrm aside that afternoon. They sat by a hollowed root, the grove stretching quiet around them. You're changing, she said. I know. Too quickly. Whrrrm didn't argue. She placed both hands on his chest just above the seed. Let me try something. I've been working with the tether since Hearthpine. He nodded. Myra's flow pulsed. Not violently, not intrusively. It circled his seed. Not pushing. Surrounding. And then she felt it. Not just one rhythm. Not just two. Three. Her hands recoiled. What did you do? Whrrrm looked up calm. I didn't do anything. Mira stared at him. Then something is growing inside you that isn't you. He nodded. I think it's Thalen. Kaelin stood on a nearby ridge, eyes narrowed. In the distance, the forest pulsed. Not with warning. With recognition. The name had reached farther than she expected. And from beyond the horizon, something was walking toward it. The wind shifted before the sound arrived. Birdsong vanished. Leaves, still green and dappled with dew, twisted in place, not away from something but toward. Kaelin noticed first. She raised her hand slowly, calling for silence. Whrrrm stopped mid-step, breath caught in his throat. The pulse in his seed hadn't changed, yet. But something just beneath it stirred, like a sleeper rolling toward a whisper. The trail in front of them curled into a hollow grove where the trees grew wide and close, their trunks marked with old rootcrafter glyphs. The script had faded, but the lines remained deep, as if carved by something that remembered pain. Then came the footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Measured. From the shadowed path a figure emerged. Cloaked in layers of root-black fabric, boots wet with moss. His face was hidden beneath a cowl, but when he stepped into the light, the trees bowed. Not from wind. From recognition. Myra's hand moved to her blade. Is it him? Kaelin didn't speak. Whrrrm didn't move. The figure stopped just beyond the light. You carry 3 names, the man said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the clearing. 2 forgotten. 1 incomplete. Whrrrm felt his knees lock. Who are you? The man stepped forward, lowering his hood. His eyes were deep green, not glowing, not artificial. Just old. I am not your enemy, he said. I am your echo. Terran stepped between them, blade drawn. You're not touching him. The man did not flinch. If I wished to harm him, he would not be standing. Kaelin circled slowly, positioning herself behind. Verdant hunt records show no one matching your voice print. I do not belong to the hunt, he said. Nor the Bloomguard. Nor the Rootcrafters. I predate them. Whrrm's mouth was dry. Then why now? Because the names are waking. And only you can carry them forward. He turned to the forest, gesturing toward the east. There is a place where memory was seeded but never allowed to bloom. The verdant system rejected it. But the root lines remember. They have always remembered. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. What's there? The man looked at Whrrm. A gate. Not like the others. A choice. One no one has made, yet. He knelt, placed his hand on the soil. The ground opened. Not violently. Not dramatically. It parted like petals. Revealing stairs. Verdant yet dry. Ancient. Mira stepped back. Another vault? The man shook his head. No. A forgotten cradle. Built before the seed became an order. Before Valen was Valen. He looked to Whrrm. It will not open for me. Why? Because I am only the one who remembers. He extended his hand. And you are the one who chooses. Whrrm looked to Mira, then to Kaelin, then down at the opening. The sprout on his shoulder bent forward. The seed pulsed once. Then again. I'll go, he said. The man nodded. And for the first time since arriving, smiled.